Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Islamic Calling podcast. Sorry for being late, guys. The stream was originally supposed to start like an hour before, but sadly there's some issues with on my house, so I had to deal with it. So
Issues
it it,
issues at
it
my
got
end
delayed.
too. Yeah,
It got
issues at
delayed.
my end too. Yeah.
So don't worry, we're gonna start now, inshallah. We're joined by brother Amy and Jay. Assalamualaikum, bro. How are you?
Walaikum salam. Yes, I'm good, alhamdulillah. But a bit tired because of the public transportation system in Malaysia. Because
Uh,
it's whacked. Okay. All right. So long
yeah,
story short, I was derailed. I mean, the train uh, was somehow delayed for too long, and then the station master told us to just disembark from the train. So I had to take what we would call Uber back to my home.
yeah.
So that costed me a lot of
Wait, did they
money
say
and so some time. Yeah.
disembark? Does it mean like you have to jump from the train?
No, I mean I have to leave the train. Right? No, I don't. We don't need to
No,
jump.
okay, okay.
Don't worry. We're not that backward. The platforms are actually quite nice. Okay. Yeah.
Brother Wax
Yeah.
PM says, "Hey guys, Assalamualaikum bro, how are you?"
How are
Brother
you?
Steve
Salam
Khan
alaikum, brother.
says, "Ali is current." We're going to talk about that.
All right. Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, the reason I actually wanted to do this stream is because recently, brother Ali Dawah, he made a video in regards to the scientific miracles argument. Uh, Personally, I think there's a lot of things I think both me and Brother Imenzi agree with, but there are some things that I think like we also maybe disagree with him. So we wanted to discuss
Of course.
this. We are also going to discuss how the enemies of Islam is trying to use this as somehow a celebration to
Oh,
act as if
yep.
like
I saw some of the comments that some of these Islamophobes make after he made his video, and yeah, they were
yeah, they're
disparaging, and of
celebrating.
course they said they jump upon his statements. But to be fair to brother Ali Dawah, I don't think he meant what those Islamophobes were spreading. Okay, he that's not what he meant. They took his statement out of context, and yeah, they celebrated because of it. Yeah.
Yeah, they celebrated and like so, and there are some things that I disagree with Brother Ali though, but we're gonna discuss all that inshallah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
before we get started, uh, yeah, before we get started, Brother Image, can you tell me like what's your history with like this kind of arguments, scientific miracle arguments? Did you use them? Like, how did you come across them?
Oh, okay. So as you yourself know, I've been involved in not dawah apologetics for over 20 years. Okay, back then when I was just pretty much a noob. Okay, I started reading Islamic books. Okay, one of the first books that I come across with regards to scientific facts in the Quran is the most famous of them all is which is Maurice Bucaille. I think you know that book,
Ah,
the Bible, the Quran, and Science. Yes, I even have that on my shelf. I still do until
can
today.
you show
So
it?
I read that. I can, but you need to give me some time to walk to the shelf. Yeah, hang on.
That's
I
fine,
can
it's
do
fine,
it.
it's
Hang
fine.
on.
Okay. By the way, your chair is really nice. It's an Iron Man chair, right? Oh, I think the camera tilted. Yeah. So basically, my history with this argument is that I first come across them when watching Zaki Naik. Even then, back then, I thought that, oh my God, these arguments are so cool, right? I mean, like, uh, there's no way anyone can deny Islam
Oops.
after this. Right? Can you show
So
the
no,
book?
I couldn't find the English version, but I have this Malay version. This is the Malay
Oh,
translation.
nice, nice.
So what it means here is basically the Bible, the Quran, and science. Okay. So
Mhm.
this is the translation. Okay. This is
Yeah,
translation
yeah,
in Malay into Malay, and I
yeah.
have the English somewhere, but I
Brother,
couldn't find it. Oops, fell again.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Brother
So
Steve
yeah.
Khan says
So
if you
to cut a long
contribute
story,
something
yeah.
to, yeah, sure. Okay, just reading the comment.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
If you contribute something to the Quran which later on proves to be false, then you have falsified the Quran in the process. Yeah, that's works for any kind of innovation. For example, if you innovate anything in the name of religion, then that's going to be false, and that includes, by the way, a lot of
Yes.
philosophical arguments. and we'll discuss that
Yes.
inshallah. A lot of scholars
Yes.
have warned against using philosophical arguments for various different reasons, and because those are also innovations. Okay, so we have to be
That's right.
careful on how we accept and reject arguments and based on what merit. So yeah,
Yep.
please continue, inshallah. Okay.
Yeah. So with regards to scientific evidences in the Quran, so I was influenced by this author, obviously, and for a short while, I actually used some of his arguments. Okay, and then of course, I watched that famous debate between Dr. Zakir Naik and what was that Christian name, William Campbell. Yeah, that was one of his earliest debates, right? That made him
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
made
That was a
that
famous
made
debate.
yeah,
He destroyed him.
that made Dr. Zakir Naik's name. That actually made the name Dr. Zakir Naik a household word. Okay, it was from that debate that
Yeah, yeah.
Dr. Zakir
Yeah.
Naik became very famous.
It's
Okay,
interesting.
so
The
I watched that
reason
debate as
the
well. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
sorry,
So
go ahead.
I think the reason Dr. Naik kind of like started using that argument is because back then atheists were using science as a weapon of mass destruction. So basically they were like on a rampage.
Actually, during that time period, the 80s were not common. Okay, there was no, because there was no new atheism. Okay, the four horsemen of atheism didn't appear on the scene yet. Okay, this is early 2000,
I mean,
2001.
like people
Okay,
like Christopher Hitchens
so
were like
yeah,
active. I think
Christopher
Christopher Hitchens
Hitchens
was active.
wasn't, no, he wasn't well known. Even if he were active at the time, he wasn't well known at the time. He came in much later. So
Okay,
Hitchens
okay,
wasn't popular. Dawkins was even he was unknown. Okay, so Daniel Dennett, nobody knows who he was at the time. So those people did not exist
still no
during
one
this
knows who
particular
he
time
is.
period. Nobody
Still no one
knew
knows who
who they
Daniel
were.
Dennett is.
Okay, a bit. Oh, nobody knows who Daniel Dennett is, huh? Yeah, but he's one of the
Yeah,
four
anyway.
horsemen of atheism. So yeah, so
Yeah,
basically, atheism wasn't popular at the time, because I remember during this time period, I was in these debates and discussions with mostly Christians. They were the ones who were the most antagonistic towards Islam, and the atheists at the time, there were a few atheists, but they were respectful towards Islam. Okay, so they actually asked very nice questions about Islam, and they wanted to know more about Islam. Okay, I remember this time period when atheists were very peaceful, or very nice towards Muslims. Okay, until 9/11 happened. Okay, and then that changed. Okay, but okay, to cut a long story short, I did use this kind of scientific arguments for a while, but after some time, I realized, there are so many other things in the Quran which we can use as evidence to prove that the Quran is true. We don't actually need to rely on scientific evidences. Okay. Nevertheless, I still believe that science and the Quran are congruent with each other. They complement each other. Okay. Like for example,
mm,
the story of the how humans are formed, right? The nutfah, from alaka to become the nutfah,
mm,
and then for nutfah it
mm,
becomes. So this is basically the stages of human reproduction, right? Development. Okay, so
mm.
conception and creation, right? So this is definitely in line with science, and I do believe that the Quran accurately describes this process. Okay,
mm.
and also, of course,
Okay,
another example is the Big Bang.
just to read a
Okay, yeah,
sorry to cut you off. Brother Steve Khan says philosophy is not innovation.
yeah, go ahead.
Even Allah says in the Quran, "Do you not think?" There's a difference between what I'm saying as philosophy. When I say philosophy, I'm not talking about like philosophy the way you understand it now. What I'm talking about
Yeah,
philosophy, I mean ilmul kalam or theological rhetoric that most scholars, most Sunni Orthodox scholars have said this is a type of innovation in the religion where you're using philosophy to understand Aqidah or innovate in the name of
yes,
Aqidah. Aqidah principles, you're coming up with Aqidah principle that is not mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah. So it's a type of innovation. So this is not permissible. This is how many kind of like deviant sects were formed, and we have many kind of like this kind of deviant sects that have formed because of this. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not
yeah,
talking about like philosophy the way you understand or rationality even. But anyway, please continue, Aki,
yeah,
as you say.
yeah. So although I do believe that the Quran, is in congruence with science, and science does not contradict the Quran, I don't think that we as Muslims should rely 100% on science to validate the Quran, because the Quran, in the end, the Quran is not a science book. Okay, it's not meant to be a
Mm,
scientific book. Okay, So, like for example, this evening I had a chat with this brother. So this brother he has been looking at the verses in the Quran where he says that the Surah Al Fusilat, I think, where he says that the earth, where Allah calls the earth, the heaven and earth to come to him and create them from smoke, right? From dukan, right?
mm,
Dukan. The Arabic word is dukan. So he was looking at the scientific evidence for this, and there are some articles, so journal articles which describe ISM. I think I don't know whether you know what ISM is, interstellar material or something like this. So so the way that scientists describe ISM is how the Quran calls it as smoke. Okay, call it as smoke. So but he was a bit obsessed over the details because he was saying, oh, why does the Quran say smoke whereas ISM, although it looks like smoke, it is not really smoke. So I told him, you shouldn't look at the Quran as a scientific book. It won't tell you what the material of ISM is. Okay, it just tells you
yeah,
what you see, what you will perceive. Okay, so if it looks like smoke, then it doesn't mean that it's exactly smoke. Okay,
yeah.
so yeah, so this brother, I
So,
think I explained
brother,
it well.
brother,
Yeah, yeah, it's him. Yeah,
sure.
it was him. So it's him. So I think I explained well to the brother. So I think
Yeah,
he was satisfied with the answer. Alhamdulillah. So as I've always told everyone, not just the brother but everyone else, you cannot and you should not look at the Quran as a scientific book. Okay, it only tells you what it sees. Like for example, like the issue on the Big Bang, on how humans were formed, on the sea, how the sea is formed, right? These things are perceptions from the human. Like for example, the Quran says that the earth was created like a carpet. Okay, it doesn't mean
mm,
literally that the earth is like a carpet flat. Okay, it just means the perception of human is such. Like for example, if you were to stand from a tall building and you look over the
mm,
desert, then you will see the land will be as though it's flat, right? So that is how the
mm,
Quran describes nature. That's how Quran describes how things are. So it's not
mm.
science. It's not meant to be science. It's not meant to be scientific. So that's how I
Yeah,
view the Quran today.
just to
Yeah.
add to that, I think the main issue that exists with this type of argument is not necessarily that,
Yeah.
this kind of like science, you're putting too much emphasis on science. I think the way this argument is formulated itself is problematic, because I don't think we're addressing the core issue here. Because what I think, one thing that people
Right.
misunderstand is that science and philosophy are not really different. Okay, this is something I need
Yes.
you guys to understand. Science and philosophy is actually not different. These are two sides of the same coin. In both cases, you have to use
Yeah.
logic to come to the conclusion, right? So in Islam, we believe
Yes.
that there
That's
is
right.
no contradiction between, this is what Ibn Taymiyyah argued, that there is no contradiction between the akal versus the nakal. Now akal also includes science. Okay, you cannot kind of like exclude that. The science is actually
Obvious.
part of this kind of like logical process. So I feel like the
Exactly.
issue that I have with some of the brothers that are kind of like propagating this kind of like, oh, science has nothing to do with Islam at all. I think that's also problematic, because like then you're excluding kind of like this kind of idea that rationality or like science itself is
Yeah,
problematic.
I
But I don't
wouldn't
think
agree. I wouldn't agree with that as well. Yeah, I wouldn't agree that science is non-existent in the Quran. I do believe that science,
yeah,
in some form or another, is in the Quran, but it's not meant to be scientific. There's a difference between
yeah.
science in the Quran and scientific details in the Quran. Okay, there's a difference
Hmm.
there, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the way like I see it is that the way you have to understand the Quran is based on the Quranic exegetical rulings that we have, tafsir basically. So basically, you can interpret the Quran in various different ways. And then you have to do it the way the Prophet ﷺ did it and his companions did it, right? Like for example, you can interpret a verse of the ayah of the Quran with other verses of the Quran, or you can look at what the Prophet ﷺ explained about the verses, or you can look at the tafsir or the commentary, you know. So I think these are the kind of like the best way to interpret the Quran. Now if you have a situation where the interpretation of the Quran and this type of situations does exist is aligned with science, then I think that's a problem. So I think in those cases, even if science goes against Islam, then science is wrong. Like we're not gonna sit here and say that just because science goes against Quran, therefore therefore Islam is false. No, if science goes against it, there are chances. For example, things like
Yeah.
evolution,
Yeah.
or other kind of like nonsense scientific theories that exist. There
Yes.
there are
Yes.
problems with the
Yes.
theories itself. You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the attitude should be
Or
that.
even historical, or even historical statements, like for example, Jesus was crucified. Okay, this
Hmm,
all historical scholars say that Jesus was crucified, but the
hmm,
Quran says that Jesus was never crucified. So we, of course, we believe the Quran more than these historical scholars, even though these
hmm,
historical scholars say, oh, we have we have very we have a huge number of historical evidence which shows that Jesus did die at the cross. But the Quran
hmm.
contradicts it. So which do you follow? You follow the scholars, or do you follow the historians, or do you follow the Quran? I will follow the Quran. I will choose the Quran over
Yeah,
the historians. Yes,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. Like we don't like take this position where like everything has to fit with like external kind of like
yeah,
things. Like we do
yeah,
believe
yeah.
that there are
Basic.
no contradiction.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
we do believe that
yes.
there are
So
no
basically,
contradiction
we
between
believe.
logic and
Yep.
scripture. However, at the same time,
Yes,
it could
that's
be
right.
the case that logic itself is flawed, right? Because human beings, when they think, they cannot always think properly. They make mistakes,
Exactly.
and as a result
Exactly.
of it, if you look at
Exactly.
scientific history, it has constantly changed. Now, obviously, what it means to change is different than like how science actually operate.
Yep.
So for example, I think
Yep.
here, I think one thing that needs to be clarified, which is that there are two type of thinking in terms of science. There's the scientific instrumentalism, and then there is scientific realism. So when we're giving dawah, I think we need to be careful on who we're dealing with. For example, if you're dealing with someone who doesn't accept science that much, then I don't think these type of arguments are necessary anyway. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
However, if you have a situation where someone is a scientific realist and they say that, oh, there's no evidence that God exists because science says so, or something like that, then I think in those cases, I think these type of arguments can be effective if it goes along with Quran and Sunnah and it doesn't go against it.
Yes.
And there are
Yes.
situations where
Yes.
these type
Yes.
of verses does exist. So
Yes.
anyway, so let's. I think we should maybe take a look at what Brother Ali Dawah's video, and then we'll make our comment,
Sure.
inshallah.
Let's start. Let's start the reaction. Yeah. Of course.
17 minutes late now starting.
Yeah. Right. Never mind. It's all right.
Hold on, give me a second. By the way, let's read some
By the way,
comments,
how
brother.
many viewers are there? By
Let's
the way, how
read
many
this
viewers
is
are
a
there right
topic
now watching
from
the
the
stream?
point of view of human. Look at the context. Yeah, uh, as I said before, like when you're reading a verse, you have to look at the commentaries. You have to look at the other verses. Like, just look at the commentaries and see if it matches with that, or other verses of the Quran to see if it matches with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's continue, inshallah. Let me.
Yep.
By the way, bro, is that an Iron Man chair?
Oh yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Where did you get it?
I got it. I got it online. Yeah, it's a local brand where they had a tie-in with Marvel. So they have several chairs based on the Marvel characters. They have a Venom chair. They have a Captain America chair. They have a Thor chair. So
Venom
one of
chair.
them is this. So I just bought. Yes, a Venom chair. Venom chair is black. Yeah, yeah.
Nice,
So
nice.
there are several. Yeah, they even have a. I think they have. I think they have a Doctor Strange chair. Yeah,
Yeah, Doctor Strange chair.
yeah, yeah. Doctor Strange chair. Yeah, with his
Yeah,
symbol.
I
You know,
think I
I
noticed that
don't.
in
Yeah,
Malaysia, I think you
the
guys can
colors
get
are
a lot
actually.
of like,
Yeah,
interesting and
yeah,
franchise kind of like
yeah,
stuff. We don't have this
yeah,
here,
yeah.
sadly.
I mean, let's face it. Malaysia is quite developed compared to other countries. Okay. So those Islamophobes who say, "Oh, the Muslims, they are so desperate to leave their Muslim nations because things are so bad, so they have to move to the West." I'll just give them the middle finger because I have no intention whatsoever to leave my country. Why should I? My country is way more advanced than yours. Okay. I love Malaysia. I love my country. Even though the MRT system fucked up earlier, okay, but I still love my country. Okay. All right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, no, this claims that Muslims are so desperate, they're living in poverty, they are so they want to move to the west. This narrative is really false. Okay, do you have any intention whatsoever to leave and move to the west just because?
I mean, I mean, I don't have plans to move to the west, but I do want to plan on leaving because of the reasons I mentioned before. But
Okay,
we'll get to that,
yeah,
inshallah. So brother Ali Dawah looks very
all right,
angry.
all
So
right.
let's start the video. Start the video.
And let's start the video then. Yeah, yeah. Sorry for
Yeah. Okay.
for
Okay. I'm not gonna
diverting.
speed it
Yeah,
up because it's a very short video. But let's take
it's
a
only
look,
six
inshallah.
minutes. Yeah, it's only six
People are
minutes. Yeah.
flocking.
Yeah. Let's continue. Bismillah.
People are flocking to Islam. So me saying the argument of signs and miracles debunked, it is debunked. And guess what? We don't even need it. Allahu Akbar.
So
And then that's the advertisement, bro.
yeah, that's a
Yeah, there's the
smart
advert.
intro
Yeah,
because YouTube on YouTube you have to like 30-second kind of like attention
yeah.
attention thing.
It's
So you have
actually
to
part
get
of the.
that.
It's actually part of the clip. It's actually part of the
Yeah,
clip
yeah,
towards the end, right?
yeah, yeah.
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 This app has been such a game changer
So
to me.
currently,
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum wa
Let's
rahmatullahi wa
skip.
barakatuh,
Yeah.
brothers and sisters and dear friends. Okay, so guys, this is a quick video, inshallah. I didn't want to do a dedicated video to this. I was here with the brothers filming for the podcast. And I thought, while I'm sat here, I'll quickly touch up on this quickly because it's not really that important. So in the Andrew Tate video that I did, I mentioned that the scientific miracles in the Quran got debunked. And for some odd reason, funnily enough, like as if they thought that it was a slip of the tongue. I'll repeat it again, very carefully. The scientific miracles argument in the Quran got debunked.
okay.
Yeah.
So there's some issues here. Which scientific miracle argument is he talking about? Like
Okay.
he never really defines it because the thing is that there are more than kind of like one kind of like these kind of arguments, right? Like for example,
Yeah,
there is the whole argument about sweet water and salt water. There is like there's a lot of different types of arguments.
Yeah. I think most of them are actually mentioned in here anyway. So yeah, I think there's a lot of
Yeah,
that. A lot of that. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, the question is like which which scientific miracle argument is he talking about? So basically, the thing is that the way I kind of like formulate these kind of like arguments, which if I let me show it, because I don't know if you saw, there's a recent debate between brother Kenny Baumer with Matt Dillahunty. So in that debate, he kind of used like the scientific miracle arguments, and I basically made like a skeleton structure of that kind of like argument.
Okay.
And hold up, stop the screen. Let me share the argument so we can maybe understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Can you see it? Okay, nice. Okay.
Yeah, it's loading.
So I think this is how like the argument usually phrased. Now the thing is that this argument is not necessarily just about kind of like this kind of scientific miracle. It can also apply to prophecies as well. So it's like a kind of like a modus ponens argument. You can say it like this: like if the Quran contained knowledge not known to human beings at the time, it is highly likely that the Quran was not written by human beings at the time. Was not written by human beings at the time. The Quran did contain knowledge not known to human beings at the time. Therefore, it's highly likely that the Quran was not written by human beings at the time.
Yep.
So basically, when it comes to prophecies or like this type of kind of like scientific miracle arguments, this is kind of like the basic kind of like skeleton argument that we use, right?
Yes, that's right.
Basically, we're saying that at the time, the Quran says things that was not known. For example, the war between the Byzantines and the Romans, right? It was not known.
Yeah.
Like no one
Very
knew
famous verse.
who was going to win the war, right?
Exactly.
So it was not known. Yet that's what the Quran says. And later on, we find out that that's exactly what happened. And what is the chances of that? Most likely that it was from God. So you can use arguments like this, and you can also use this kind of argument on like this kind of like scientific things. However, the way you kind of like way you have to use this kind of argument, I break it down into two categories, right? So basically, you have to falsify these kind of like arguments. One is the argument supported by the Quran and the Sunnah, or the scholarly interpretive, like scholarly exegetical method, right? So you have to look at the rules of how to, for example, in Islam, we have rules on how to interpret the Quran, right? For example, like as I said, you can look at one verse and match it with another verse, or you can look at the
Yeah.
commentaries, you can look at the prophetic commentary, and or you can look at the tafsir. So if it
Yes.
matches that, so it has to first match that, and second is that what was the second one? Okay, second is that basically so yeah, basically it has to match that, and it cannot be a situation where this was already known, right? Like
Yep.
for example, you have a lot of situations where like a lot of kind of like quote unquote scientific information that was already known at the time, so you cannot
Yeah.
use that argument in
Yeah.
that cases, right? So this has to
Yeah.
pass these two
Definitely.
criteria, right? These two criteria has to be passed.
Mhm,
Now
mhm.
if this argument doesn't
Okay.
pass these two criteria, you cannot use them.
Hmm.
You agree with this, bro? What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. I have no problems with it. I think this is consistent with how I approach the Quran from a scientific point of view, or to use the
Yeah,
arguments, the scientific, the so-called, the scientific arguments from the Quran. So
yeah,
as long as these scientific evidences or whatever do not contradict the Quran, like for example the history, the historicity of
yeah,
Jesus crucifixion, for example, I have no problems with it.
yeah,
Like, I mean, in the case of Jesus being crucified, that is pretty much like a overall consensus by historians that Jesus was really crucified. But the Quran contradicts that. However, because we
mm.
believe that the Quran to be the word of God, we cannot take those historians' words as fact, right? Because the Quran
Yeah, I
overrides
think
it
one thing needs to
regardless.
be
Yeah,
explained is that
yeah,
the
yeah,
reason we kind of accept what the Quran says. Like for example, there are
yeah.
kind of like deviant Muslims that will say that, oh, Jesus was never kind of like crucified. Like there, for example, Brother Daniel was having like debate with this
Yeah,
guy who says that
yeah,
Jesus was
yeah.
not
That's right.
crucified. Now, of course, the reason
Yeah.
we believe Jesus was crucified because first it says in the text. Secondly, it's not just
Yes.
the text,
Yes.
because the thing is that how you interpret the text is also important, and there are rules on how you interpret
Yes. That's
text.
right.
Text, like for example, you look at the
Exactly. Exactly.
consistency. Is the how many times the Prophet
Yes.
Sallam, sorry, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala mentioned it in the Quran. You have to look at the other
Yes.
verses. You have to look at how
Yes.
what did Prophet Sallam himself believed, right? You have to look at the
Yes.
Sunnah.
Yes.
You have
Yes.
to look at what the scholars have said regarding this, right? So basically, when you
Yes. Yes.
combine all of this, and it all points to that Jesus alayhi salam was crucified, and that's why we believe this. So we have a whole kind of like scholarly tradition that is dedicated to understanding this type of verses, because otherwise you can just read a verse and you
Mm.
can come to any conclusion, you know. Uh,
Yes.
because
Yes. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
thing is that this, and you see that these kind of like heretics or like kind of like deviants, they oftentimes use verses completely out of context, or even like Islamophobes, they use verses completely out of
Yes.
context. I mean, Robert Spencer, for example,
Yes.
like you have read his book. Like, what's
Yeah.
the issue with his like take? Can you explain?
Yes. That's right. Uh.
Yeah, exactly. Like, for
Yeah.
example,
So. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
that's a basically that's
Yeah.
the main crux of the matter. So when you're reading a verse, it has to match these signs of tafsir, signs of tafsir, or the rules of
Yes. That's right.
how we interpret verses in the Quran.
The principle. Yeah. So basically, the tafsir authors, they use this principle called
Yeah,
the Quran interprets the Quran. Okay, this is the basic
yeah, yeah.
principle of Quranic tafsir. Okay, I mean, I
It's
have
it's a whole kind of
Condon
like
first
field.
book here somewhere. Yeah,
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 it's a totally separate field entirely. Okay, it's a whole science in itself. Okay,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
so that's how wide, that's how deep Islamic knowledge is. Okay,
Mhm.
yeah. So
Like
I'm
for
I'm
example,
not
if you
uh,
look
I'm
at
not really that deep into it. Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
hmm.
Yeah.
Like for example, if you read Imam Tabari's work or Imam Qurtubi's work, they kind of use this, or Ibn Kathir, like they
Okay.
use this. They look at a
Yeah.
verse of the Quran, then they look at the
Yeah.
sayings of the companions of what they believed in the early generation, from
Yes.
the first three
Yes.
generation, what
Yes.
the Prophet believed,
Yes.
what other verses say in regards to this. Then they come to a conclusion, or they
Yeah.
try to kind of like
That's right.
exegete based
That's
on
right.
them.
That's right.
So
Exactly.
yeah,
But
so basically, yeah,
Islamophobes, they yeah. So the Islamophobes, what they do is they'll take one particular, like for example, the verse saying go against the disbelievers, and Suratul At-Taubah. Okay, Surah At-Taubah.
mhm,
So there are verses in Surah At-Taubah which says, go and kill the disbelievers. But then, the problem with their interpretation of such verses is that at the end of it, there's usually a context. Okay, there's a context why the verse says as such.
yeah,
But they remove that context. They just simply take one particular. They just take the
mm,
first part which says go kill the disbelievers, but they forget about the last part
mm.
which says, do not attack them if they do not attack you. You see? So that's how
Yeah.
the Islamophobia, like this idiot here who does the same thing. Right? I think I showed this book
Yeah.
last night. Yeah,
Yeah.
this
Robert
idiot
Spencer,
here.
right?
Okay. Yep. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So by
Oops.
the way, uh, is it out of charge?
I think it is. Wait, hang on. Let me
Okay.
check. Yeah, it's dead. It's
Sure.
dead, bro. Oh, my phone died. I'm sorry.
Okay.
My
No
phone died.
problem. No problem. You can turn off the camera.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'll just switch off the camera. I'm sorry. I did warn you about this. Yeah, you're going to die
Sure.
anyway.
No problem.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
No problem.
Unless if you want
So
me to switch on
basically,
my horrible camera.
uh, no, I think that's fine. I mean, you can see anything on
uh,
that camera anyway.
yeah,
So
that's right.
yeah. So
Yeah.
basically, the point that we're kind of like making is that when it comes to this kind of like any kind of like this kind of like arguments, so-called scientific arguments, the way you use them is that first you have to falsify using two things. One, you have to look
Yeah.
at the scholarly method, and it has to
Yeah.
pass that criteria. And two, it has to be
Yeah.
an information that was not known in the past, right? So when these two
That's right.
criteria
That's right.
have been passed, and then you can use this argument, right? However, even
That's right.
then, like when you're
Exactly.
using this argument, you have to keep in mind who you're using it against. Like for example,
Yeah.
is the person a scientific realist or is he a scientific instrumentalist? If that person is a scientific instrumentalist, then there's no use in using this kind of argument. So you have to look
Yeah.
at the scientific realist or like atheist who believe that science can tell you what the truth is. Brother COVID
Yes.
FF channel is here. Assalamu alaikum, bro. How are you?
Yeah, brother Muhammad is here. Walaikum salam warahmatullah, my brother from the UK. MashaAllah.
Yeah,
It's good to see you, brother. Yeah.
nice, nice. Okay, so let's continue with the video, inshallah. And
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, for
I
those
think
who
I,
have
I
just
think
joined, I'm
Brother
sorry
Ali Dawah,
I
I
can't
think
switch on the camera. Yeah.
sure, no
Yeah.
problem. I think Brother
Sorry.
Ali
Go
Dawah
ahead.
is on the
Yeah.
right track, but the way he says it, I think is a bit problematic because I feel like it's
Yeah.
a bit too dismissive in a way because there are verses that matches with scientific facts. That is
Yes, exactly.
even agreed
Exactly.
by scholars. So
Yep.
I think
Yep.
it's a bit uh, wrong to. I think he himself admits later on in the video, but we'll discuss that, inshallah.
Yeah, I hope my
Yeah.
tajweed is on point.
Exactly.
So when I said this, a lot of Islamophobes were celebrating as if I was like, oh my gosh, like this video is going to be me apologizing. And no, listen, it got debunked. Now, let's give some context for some Muslims so they can understand. For example, and I'll tell you where this comes from. And you know why many people in the Dua, many Duat, YouTubers, my colleagues, like brothers that I work with, didn't do a video. Why did you say that? Because they know it as well. In what sense? Brothers and sisters, I was having a debate with a guy called Phil. Yes? This guy is a scientist or whatever he is.
Actually, I remember Phil. I don't know if you guys watched like any of the Speaker's Corner videos. So this guy was like absolutely obnoxious. Like he constantly used like science. I think he made like
Oh,
documentaries and whatnot.
is he an atheist? Is he an atheist?
Yeah, he's an atheist.
Okay. I
Brother
don't think
Jerry
I've
says, so
come
Allah
across
said
that.
in the Quran, I forgot the surah, He made the heaven like a roof canopy. Yeah, so basically, heavens are
Yep.
things of the
Yep.
unseen. These are not things that would be
Yes.
like things in our existence, right? These are a matter of the unseen. So
Yes.
these are talking
Exactly.
about things that we cannot
Exactly.
see, we cannot observe. So that's what's been described here.
Yeah.
If you read the
Yeah.
tafsir, if
Yeah.
you read the
I mean
commentary, you'll see it.
yeah, it's not like I've mentioned before, you cannot interpret it literally or scientifically. Basically, when he says that the heavens are created like the roof, it means the sky is above us. We can see the clouds covering over us, hovering over us, and it's like a roof. It looks like a roof.
Mm.
I mean, it doesn't function like one, but it does look like one. Okay, so the
Yeah.
Quran is
So
just
basically,
describing how you would view
heaven
it.
is basically
Yeah,
anything from
yeah,
the ground
yeah,
to upwards. And scholars have
yeah,
written books on
yeah,
it.
yeah,
It's not something you can see
yeah,
or something like that because Prophet went to
yeah,
heaven, but these are not
yeah,
like physical things,
yeah.
physical places. Yeah. So these are
Yes,
very kind of
yes,
like
exactly. So yeah,
things that are beyond our comprehension.
so yeah,
It's of the
so this
unseen.
kind of things are not meant to be scientifically understood. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so let's continue. Let's see what it says.
For that matter. I was debating with him, and I can remember this very clearly a couple of years ago. And I took an ayah in the Quran, which I am not qualified to do, which is it's like doing tafsir. So there was an ayah in the Quran which says that there are 7 heavens. So I was claiming, because of this whole scientific narrative, that this is talking about the ozone layer. Number one, it is haram for me to do that. Why? Because how can I give an understanding to the Quran, the ayah, with no qualifications. And who have ever said that this is the ozone layer? Then I was having
Yeah, so you see that this kind of like the way Brother Ali is explaining it is exactly what I talked about. So you're not doing a
Yeah.
proper kind of exegete of the Quran, because the way you understand Quran is by the way the scholars have understood it, right?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Uh, so, for example, I think, brother, what is the function of canopy on Earth to protect us from elements like rain, hot water? No, I think these are matters of the unseen. Okay, like these are not like things we can. You can like you cannot compare it with like things like that we can see or touch. Like the heavens are like
Yeah.
matters of the unseen. Like for
Yeah.
example, if you
Yeah.
read about this in more in depth, you'll see this. But anyway, so
Yeah.
as I was saying,
Yeah.
so basically what Brother Arito is describing is exactly what I said earlier in the video, where you have to
Yeah.
do a proper tafsir of the verses. You cannot just come up with like some nonsense in your head and say that, oh, this is a scientific miracle. It doesn't work like that. So in order for these arguments to be effective, you have to do a proper tafsir of these verses based on the Quran and the Sunnah. It has to match that, and then you can continue, right? Right
Okay.
there.
Yeah. Still here. Still here. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, it has to match that. So when he was saying things like seven heavens, uh, when he says things like seven heavens or like
Yeah.
things of that nature, you cannot really kind of compare that with things in our existence. Like for example, these are
Mhm.
things that are matter of the unseen. So and
Yep.
we know that Prophet Sallam visited the seven heavens, and obviously we cannot see it. Like we cannot see like seven heaven, we cannot see like second heaven or anything like that. These are unseen
Yeah.
matters.
Exactly.
Now Prophet
Yeah.
Sallam
This is
went there by
metaphysical.
the
Like
mercy of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala.
like
Yeah.
it's basically like how that idiot Apusi, he when he debated with me with regards to it wasn't about science, but he diverted to science because he was citing this hadith where the sun went under or was thrown, and then it prostrated before God, thrown before God, and then it
Yeah.
went up again. So he was asking me,
Yeah.
how is this scientific? I just answered simply that it's metaphysical. How the hell? Do any Muslim believe that the sun literally prostrate before God? No Muslim believes this. How Muslims understood this hadith is that it is a matter of the unseen, and it's not meant to be understood scientifically. Okay, so how the sun
Hmm.
prostrates before God, that's metaphysical. So that was my answer. But this idiot, he just keep denying it. So it was just pointless at that point. When I said metaphysical, I kind of knew that he couldn't answer to that. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Brother Dred says something about canopy. I'm not sure what you're trying to get at, bro. Like, for example, as I mentioned, like the heavens are basically not like physical things. Like, I think you're trying. I think what some people try to kind of explain in these type of arguments is that, oh, when he says heaven, it's referring to something like our Earth's atmosphere, right? Now,
yeah.
again, like if you look at the commentaries and stuff like that, I don't think you can find this kind of explanation. But is it possible? Sure, it's possible. But I don't think we can just jump to a conclusion and say that this is what it's talking about. But I will show examples of verses that actually does talk about things in nature that is true that was not known at the time of the prophet. And those type of
Yeah.
verses do exist, and those can be very effective if used properly. For example, the Prophet
Exactly.
Sallallahu even talked about flies having like wings that can cure diseases, right wing, I believe, right?
Yes.
So, and those
Yes.
are actually
Bacteriophagous.
scientifically
Mm.
accurate facts, right? So there
It
are
is.
things
It
like that
is. I
in
actually have
Islam.
an article on that. I have an article on that particular hadith. You know, uh,
Oh, nice,
I even
nice.
have the hadith on. I even have an article describing talking about the issue of the drinking of camel urine. Yeah. So that's actually scientifically proven. Okay. Until today we have this medicine called Premarine. Okay. Premarine
Hmm,
is made out of horse's urine, okay, to
hmm,
extract obviously not the exact not the urine itself, but an extract from the urine.
hmm,
So camel's urine is similar to the horse's urine. So the benefits are, of course, not properly studied yet, but I think there are some papers actually which talk about this. If you go to if you go to some I can't remember the name of the website. There's this website where you can find journal articles which talks about research into camel urine, so and the benefits.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
So
mean,
it's
like,
totally scientific in that
yeah,
sense. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like, there are like things in Islam that that in the Quran or the Sunnah that just does describe kind of like scientific like facts.
Yep.
And when I
Exactly.
say scientific
Exactly.
facts, I mean like things we
Yes.
can observe. Oh, that's another thing actually. There's actually three criteria. That's
Yeah.
another criteria. It's that the scientific
Yes.
thing that you're trying to argue with has to be something that's like a scientific fact and not a scientific theory. So scientific facts are basically
Yep.
things that scientists have simply found out about, right? Like for example, before we
Yes.
didn't know that atoms
Okay.
existed, right? But then scientists have found out that atoms existed, and now we can actually check
Mm.
that atoms whether atoms exist or not. We can see through like a microscope, and we can see that atoms do exist. Of cells, for example, in the
Yes.
past we didn't know cells existed,
Yes.
but now we can actually check and see that yes, cells do exist. So these are scientific facts. Now these things they don't change, and and I think by the Alida will touch on this, but I think this is where our disagreements will come into play. But let's continue and let's see what he says, inshallah, and then I will talk about scientific did the difference between scientific fact and scientific theories.
Right.
I'm going to debate with this
Right. Right.
atheist guy
Let's
and
do that.
trying to tell him that there's 7 ozone layers. And he was saying to me, no, my friend, there are 6 ozone layers. And I was saying 7. He was saying 6, 7, 6, 7, 6. And we said, let's go to the NASA page. So we went to the NASA page, and in the NASA page, guess what? It said,
But by the way, another thing, this has actually nothing to do with science. Like when it comes to ozone layers, these are simply abstract things. Like for example, scientists,
Okay.
but like it's like naming a planet, either a planet or like a dwarf star or whatever, right? Like for example, recently they said that
Okay.
Pluto is not a planet. But that's like completely arbitrary. That has
Yes.
nothing to do with science, right? Scientists felt like it's not a
Mm-hmm.
planet, so they describe it as not a planet, right?
Yeah.
So same thing with
Yeah.
like atmosphere. They say like, oh, it has 7 things or 10 things or whatever, 10 properties that can be because it has 10 properties. Therefore, there are 10 layers or whatever, right? And maybe
Yeah.
in the future they will find more. So there's no certainty there. So these are the kind of things you cannot use in scientific this type of scientific arguments.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I
That's right.
think we shouldn't
That's
call
right.
it scientific argument, more like kind of like naturalistic arguments, right? To
Theory.
convince like atheists.
I think this is
Yeah,
scientific. This is more like scientific theories, I guess. Yeah, like what you
yeah, yeah,
mentioned. Yeah.
yeah. This is what I'm talking about. So scientific theories can change because it's a matter of interpretation, but scientific facts
Yes.
they don't change. Uh,
Yes, that's right.
Brother PGA says Islamophobes when multiple scholars say there are scientific miracles versus when a dude on YouTube says it. Yeah, yeah, there are scholars that say
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Brother Dread Insight said the physical seven heavens do not refer to atmospheric layer on the earth that was made up by Harun Yahya. Yeah, yeah, that's another guy I've heard about. Have you heard of Harun Yahya?
Of course, I have. I mean, the Arun Yaya was active during my time, man. I mean, he was very active. He came out with all sorts of books against atheism, against
Yeah,
evolution, against against Darwin. Especially, he has this obsession with refuting Darwin's
yeah,
theory,
yeah,
by the way. And he actually have a book. He actually has a whole encyclopedia of creation where he shows all these beautiful images of animals from the way back
uh,
in the prehistoric era, and then he compares them
yeah,
with the animals of today, and then he claims that the animals remain the same. They have not changed over the years, over the century. So he's
yeah,
that
yeah,
obsessed. But back when I was active, I did read some of his stuff. Okay, there are some things that he say which are interesting. But after a while, I realized the guy was just whack. He was
yeah.
too obsessed with trying to refute atheism, and too
Mhm.
much of a. I think he focused too much on Darwin's theory, too much on it. So I just I was put off by it, and then eventually I just stopped reading his stuff. Yeah, but he was very
Yeah,
active during the day. Yeah,
yeah. I think
yeah,
this is where it becomes problematic, and I think this is the reason why a lot of kind of
yeah,
apologists and duat kind of moved away from this type of
yeah,
arguments is because of people like Harun
yeah,
Yahya. Because the thing is that you need to
yeah,
understand
yeah,
the,
yeah.
the way we
Yeah, I
understand the
mean,
Quran is
you,
through this
you know
scholarly
that
method. Yeah,
Harun Yahya is now in jail, right? Yeah, but of course, it's a different
yeah,
story. Yeah,
yeah. What is
yeah.
he in jail for?
He was accused of evading taxes or something like this, and then he was
Uh,
jailed for 800. And then the punishment for that was 800 years in prison or something like this. So basically, it's like a life
800
sentence for
years.
him. Yeah, 800 years. Yeah,
Will
no
it be
joke,
800
no
years
joke,
more?
bro. You can Google that. You can Google it up. Yeah. So he was accused of
Oh
tax
man,
evasion or something like that. Something against the government, and I don't quite remember what it was. Yeah. Yeah.
800 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Like I mean, like
Eight
he's got to
hundred
be some
years. Yeah.
immortal to get punishment like
Yeah.
that.
Is that basically no? Basically, it means that it's a life sentence, right? They don't say it's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
life sentence. They just say 800 years, right? Yeah.
800 years.
Eight
That's
hundred
funny.
years. Yeah. No joke, man. No joke. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I
Yeah.
think we both agree that Brother Alida, what he's saying he does have a point, which is that when you're using these kind of
Yeah.
arguments, you have to be very careful on how you use them. So as we mentioned, there are
Exactly.
now three criteria. I actually forgot there are three criteria. One is that it has to match the scholarly commentary or scholarly consensus, or no, sorry, scholarly interpretive method, uh, or
Yeah.
the science of tafsir, and it has to be a type of information that was not known at the time. And three, it has to be a scientific fact, meaning it is something that you yourself can observe and test and see for yourself.
Yep.
These are highly unlikely to change. For example, the fact that atoms exist or cells exist, like these are not things that are up for dispute. These are not things that will change. So these three criteria have to be met for you to use arguments like this effectively. Another thing you have to keep in
Yes.
mind is that when you're using this type of arguments, you have to realize whether the person is a scientific instrumentalist or not, or whether he's a scientific realist. If you can
Yeah.
understand this type of kind of like four things, I think you can effectively argue against atheists, or this type of atheists who believe in scientific realism or naturalism
Yeah.
more effective.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think yeah. So yeah, I think let's continue. Now, I think we will disagree with like what about the Ali Dawah says, or at least I will. So yeah, brother Trade Insight says, when I was in secondary school here in Malaysia, one ustad
Yeah.
loved to use the book of Harun Yahya to teach
I'm
us.
not. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Harun Yahya. Actually, Harun Yahya's books were quite popular here in Malaysia at one point, because there's this bookstore, which ironically I used to work for them. Okay, for an NGO which they formed. The owner has now passed away since.
Mm.
They used to promote Harun Yahya's books. Okay, and it was quite popular. It was as popular as Ahmad Didat's books at the time. Before
Oh
this
wow.
was a bit. There was a bit before Dr. Zakir Naik became famous. Okay, so during this time
Mm.
period, the two people that were very famous in apologetics and da'wah, I guess, Ahmad
Mm.
Didat, Sheikh Didat, and Harun Yahya. So these two were very
Mm.
popular at this particular period of time. And then later on, when after a while, then Dr. Zakir Naik became popular after that. Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
because of the debate with
Yeah.
Campbell, of course. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a problem with like people like Harun Yahya if they become famous instead of actual scholars of Islam, because
yeah,
if you look at like some of our scholars, they have already interpreted these verses based on the Quranic exegetical rulings.
yeah.
So I think
I mean,
in a way
to be honest,
this is
yeah,
good. In a way, this is good
yeah,
because now that
yeah,
people are
yeah,
moving away, they are focusing more on how
yeah,
scholars have interpreted
yeah,
these verses, as opposed
yeah.
to listening
I
to
think
apologists. Yeah.
to be honest, I think initially I think Harun Yahya was sincere, because he really tried to attack Darwinism, and he really was supportive of creationism. So, but the problem with this is that he eventually, I think the fame, he was very famous after, because of this. But after a while, I think the
Mm.
fame got to his head, and then he started doing strange things. Okay, and it's not just
Mm.
about his
By the
books;
way,
it's also
I don't know
about
if it's
things that
true or
he did
not. He was a
offside.
cult
Yeah,
leader. Apparently,
yeah.
I heard that he was a cult leader. Is that true?
He was a Yes, it is true. It is true. He actually lived in a house
Oh my
with
god.
several women, which he calls
Oh
his
my god.
bunnies. Yes, yeah, it's that bad. Yeah, this was
Bunny.
about a year. This was about 2 or 3 years before his arrest. Yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
god.
He actually has a TV show where he shows off his bunnies, and his bunnies were walking around in scantily clad dresses,
Oh my god.
and he's giving and he was giving a lecture about Islam. Will you believe it? Yeah, no joke, man. No
So
joke, bro. It's really,
wait,
it's on.
doesn't
It's actually on
Ali Dawah
YouTube, man.
also have
Yeah.
like some videos where he's discussing like with women and stuff like that?
I'm not sure. I don't
I think
remember. If even if he did, I don't. I
yeah,
wouldn't know.
he
Yeah.
has some videos
Yeah.
on this. I think he faced some criticism. I think okay, so I feel like we need to clarify something. Like we're not trying to attack Brother Ali Dawah in that sense, but there will be disagreements with Brother Ali Dawah. I do disagree with him on a lot of topics. Brother
Okay.
Knowledge Note
Yeah.
definitely does not like him. I think he criticizes him very harshly. I know Brother Knowledge Note personally, so he doesn't like him at all. But he has his reason for it. I think he's very passionate when it comes to the Quran and Sunnah and this kind of thing. He's a very hard Salafi. I'm also Salafi. Both of us are Salafis.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think Brother
Yeah.
Knowledge Note has the
Hey,
issue. But
you forget
for
me,
us,
man.
for us,
I'm pretty much. Yeah, I'm pretty much Salafi too, inverted commas. Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
Very close to it anyway.
For us though,
Yeah.
I think we do have disagreements with Brother Ali Dawah. I think we'll talk about it. But like as far as like his general point, I think we can agree to some extent. But I think I would say that the way he's kind of like conveying it is a bit problematic because I feel like he's being too general about it. For example, I think these kind of like points should have been made on like how you should make or how you should properly uh, interpret verses of the Quran, how the scholars have done it. If he made a video on that, I think that would be more beneficial as opposed to like him saying, "Oh, these arguments have nothing to do with Islam and whatnot." I think that's not helpful because there are verses that actually does match kind of like this kind of criteria based on the
Yeah.
scholarly interpretation
That's right.
or scholarly method. So yeah, and let's continue, inshallah. Let's see what is it.
Okay.
The
Go ahead.
argument was apparently from their recent findings, whatever it may be. It's probably changed. And this is my whole point of the video, yeah? Science changes. It said that there is 5 ozone layers. So I looked at him, he looked at me, and I was thinking, I'm saying 7, you're saying 6, NASA is saying 5. That is where the penny dropped for me. You know why? Because we are making claims about the Quran and specific verses, and because we was, not myself, I would say, but a lot of people were very insecure because of the scientific, discoveries or whatever it may be, and we was trying to fit the scientific narrative into the Quran, which was a big mistake because it's as if as good as we were making science the guideline for the Quran to be accepted. This is nonsense.
Yeah.
Okay. So
He has
this is
a
where
point here.
I'm gonna disagree with Brother Ali though. Okay, and I'm gonna throw some criticism.
Okay.
So first of all,
All right.
okay,
Sure. Go
he
ahead.
does 2 things that are wrong. Okay, so first he says that science changes. Now, what he's referring to is scientific theories. Okay, scientific theories
Yes.
changes.
That's right.
However, when it comes to
Yes.
scientific
Yes.
facts or things that scientists have figured out that we now accept as like fact, right? Like for example, things like atoms or things like cells, these things are not going to change. I mean, it doesn't unless Allah
Yep.
subhanahu wa ta'ala change it for some reason. But these
Yeah.
things are not
Right.
not
Right.
not going to change. Like for example, like it's like
Yes.
saying this color, this thing is color, this thing has a black color, right? It's like saying tomorrow it's
Right.
not going to be black. Of course, logic doesn't work like that. Science doesn't work like that.
Sure.
Like when it comes to scientific facts, facts don't change. What can change is scientific
Yeah.
theories, which is basically interpretation of those facts by scientists, right? So these are like kind of like these
Yep.
theories that they have based on those facts. So this can change because scientists can be wrong because the way their intellect is limited, right? They are not basing their arguments based on scripture. So it's based on limited intellect. So they're going to make mistakes. It's bound to happen. So of course, scientific theories will likely to change. And here, the example that he showed is basically kind of like one of these kind of abstract. It's not really a scientific theory. It's like an abstract concept that scientists are changing based on their own whims and desires. It's like naming a planet, saying that Pluto is not a planet. But what criteria are they using for saying that Pluto is not a planet? Right. So that's one first point that I'm going to disagree with Brother Ali Dawah here. And the second point is he's saying that the reason Muslims did that, or people like Zakir Naik did that, or like other like there are even some scholars that are also kind of like use this type of arguments. I think even Sheikh Uthman kind of used these kind of scientific arguments. But what he's saying is that the reason they did that is because they want to fit science into because they're suffering from insecurity or whatever. They want to fit science into this. Into the Quran, right? But you shouldn't do that because like then you're assuming people's intention, right? Because we don't know what reason they use this argument for. Like I can't look inside Zakir Naik's heart and say that, oh, this is the reason he's doing it. As a matter of fact, it's haram to do so.
Yeah.
We cannot do that. We cannot assume people's intention.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what's going on in Zakir
Exactly.
Naik's heart. Like I don't know what's going on
Yeah.
in brother Kenny Wamar's heart. I cannot make judgments like that,
Yeah.
right? And
Yes.
this is actually there's a hadith by the Prophet where there's one man. I think he was a disbeliever and he was fighting the Muslims. At one point, he says that I accept Islam, but the companion
Yes.
he didn't believe him. He thought that he's
Yeah.
just lying, so
Yeah.
he
He
killed him.
killed. He killed him. Yeah. He
Yeah,
killed him. Yeah.
and the Prophet
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
angry and he said that did you
Yeah.
look into his
Prophet was
heart?
very upset. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The
Yeah.
Prophet got
Yeah.
very
Prophet
upset.
was very
So
upset
this is
because
the
of
second
this.
point
Yeah.
of criticism I will have of brother Ali Dawah, which is that you shouldn't assume things like this. Like we don't know. We don't know the reason they might
Yeah.
use this argument. Now they may be wrong, right? The way they use this argument, it could be that they're wrong, but we can't just assume that the reason they're doing it is because they want to fit science into this, right? I don't think
Yeah.
that's the right thing to do. But let's
Okay.
continue, inshallah.
Understand where you're coming from. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we take the Quran, not science. To hell with science. Science changes tomorrow, today. They talk about the Big Bang. Now there's new studies or whatever, new findings that there was no Big Bang.
Yeah, that's scientific. Again, scientific theories, not facts. Like for example, if
Yes.
tomorrow,
Yes.
like it's never going, it's highly unlikely to be the case that tomorrow you like for example today we know that gravity exists and tomorrow gravity is not going to exist. Like that's not gonna, that doesn't work like that.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. Yeah, yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
scientific
Anyway,
facts don't
anyway,
change, but
what,
scientific theories.
anyway, what is he talking about? Is quite new to me. The Big Bang doesn't exist. Have you heard of
Yeah,
this?
okay.
Of
So
this theory?
when it comes to Big Bang, now
Alternative
again,
theory.
Big Bang is an example of like scientific theory. Now, Big Bang is a very useful and powerful theory in science. Now, again, just like with any scientific theories, like when it comes to like scientific position, the position I take is
Is
the
it? Is
scientific
it? By the way,
instrumentation.
is it still regarded as a theory? Because there are some people who say that Big Bang is now a
It's a
scientific
theory. It's a
fact,
theory.
right?
It's a theory because
Still a theory.
anything like scientific, the way scientific theories work is that scientific theories make inductive arguments. So what is an inductive argument? So inductive argument is where basically you say something based on probability. Like what are the chances of the
Yeah.
chances of this being true is very high. And they try to fit different
Yeah.
evidences based on that. But they're not saying,
Okay.
scientists are not saying this is absolute fact. So this is a mistake. And this is something
Okay.
that many of
Okay.
these, sadly, many of these duat can use and brothers use, but this is a
Okay.
mistake to say that scientists are saying that, these are facts. They're not saying that.
Okay.
They're simply saying the
Okay.
evidence best fit our theory, so it's more likely to be true. That's what they're saying. However, from an
Okay.
Islamic perspective,
Okay.
we reject it because the best position for us is that what is true, we accept what is true based on Quran and Sunnah. We don't go by what science
Yes.
says or like what history says.
Yes.
You know.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, so basically this is the position that we take. And so again, like as he's saying, when he says that Big Bang theory has been debunked, it hasn't been debunked. Okay, so basically what happens is that there are a lot of
Okay.
contradictory theories that have come forward, but in order for
Okay.
it to be quote
Okay.
unquote debunked, it has to make false predictions, and a lot of false prediction, to the point where it will
Right.
no longer
Right.
work. Like the theory will no longer work. When you have situations like
Okay.
that, you
Okay.
can have what is known as in science they use the word paradigm shift. I think Thomas Kuhn talks
Okay.
about it in his book. He's a philosopher. He's a philosopher of science. He says that sometimes you will have
Okay.
this kind of like paradigm shift where people will just
Okay.
disregard a theory because it is
Mhm.
getting
Okay.
things wrong too many times.
Okay.
This is how like we
Okay.
have like, some scientific theories about plate tectonics. Like there was another theory before that where people believe that Earth was organic or something like that, and there was no plate
Okay.
tectonics. But then later on, when this plate tectonic theory came about, people started to realize this actually explains a lot, and this is a very good theory to explain what's happening, may have happened in the past.
Okay.
So this
Okay.
is how scientific
So
theories work.
so
They're not
so
trying
would
to-
you say that the Big Bang is much more plausible right now, or can that change in the future?
Yeah, so my position is that again, like I think the best position is that we go by what Quran and Sunnah says. However, if there are things in like when it comes to Big Bang, I don't think there's any contradiction between that and like what Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says in the Quran, as far as I can understand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just a theory
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
says that there's universe started existing, like there was this explosion, and it continues to expand. And there are many reasons to believe this, like cosmic microwave background is something you can see, and there are many evidences that we can use to justify these kind of like theories. And another thing you have to
Yeah.
understand is that like as of now, scientists really use this theory a lot because it's a very useful theory. That doesn't mean it's true. It doesn't mean it's false. It's just a theory that is useful, and that is
I
a
see.
position that I think we should take, which is the position of the scientific instrumentalism. So the position of scientific instrumentalism is that we don't say science is either true or false. We just say it's useful, right? Like for
Okay.
example, imagine you have a situation where I think we talked about this before, where some people say that you know the sun is going around Earth, and based on the theory, they
Yeah.
use the agriculture. Like for example, in the past, they did
Yeah.
this. They used
Yeah.
like theories of like heliocentrism to plant crops, and it worked.
Yeah.
As a matter
Yeah.
of fact, they were perfectly successful, right?
Yeah.
It's only
Yeah.
later on then when like people it got debunked, right? We realized that actually Earth is rounding the sun. Now a
Yes.
scientific instrumentalist wouldn't have a problem with this because they don't accept that science can tell us what is true and what is false. What they'll say is that
Yeah.
it's a useful thing we use. It's like a tool, right? It's a tool in a toolbox. We can use this, but it doesn't tell us what is true or false.
Yeah.
And same thing here, like
Yeah.
our perception or our epistemology or what we say is true or false is based on the Quran and the Sunnah. It's not based on science.
Yep.
So if we
Yep.
have a situation where science contradicts it, doesn't matter. If it matches it, doesn't matter. But if it matches it, we can at least use this against people who say that science is the ultimate truth. We can debunk their position and convince them
Yeah.
that Islam is the truth, right?
Yes. That's
So I
right.
think this is
That's right.
how this arguments can be effective. So when it comes to
Yeah.
Big Bang Theory, what he's basically trying to say is that there's a lot of contradictory evidence. But then again, just because there are contradictory evidence doesn't necessarily mean this theory got quote unquote debunked,
Yeah.
because there are still a lot of theories that the theory does get right, which is why scientists are not gonna just throw this theory out the window because it's a useful thing,
Hmm. Yeah.
and that's
Okay.
the thing. They're not saying it's like some kind of objective truth. It's just a useful thing to explain other things.
It's just an instrument. It's just a tool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a tool.
Mm.
But if one day it
That's it.
stops working at all, they're not going to use it.
Yeah. They will just remove it. They will just
Yeah.
forget. I think, if I'm not mistaken, during the Middle Ages, there's this theory before the theory of what do you call it? The spread of germs, right? Germ theory. Yeah, germ theory.
Mm.
There was this theory called miasm theory, right? Where they believe that the diseases are spread by smell, right? During the
Yeah.
Black Death,
Yeah.
especially during the Black Death.
Yeah.
But then when we
Yeah.
when biology became much more advanced, and then we realized that there are germs, then the germ
Yeah.
theory came on, right? And then the miasm theory just faded away. So I
Yeah.
believe this is what you were saying, right? You're referring
Yeah. So
what you meant, right?
basically, the
Yeah.
point of this kind of like scientific theories is to be useful in daily lives. Like the reason all these kind of jump theories exist is so we can be aware of like diseases. We can prevent it.
Yep.
We can be safe.
Yep.
Right. That is
Yep.
the correct
Yep.
position.
Yep.
Now, I think in nowadays this has changed, and people think that science can somehow tell you what is true and what is false, right?
Yeah.
But that's the
Yeah.
wrong position to take
Especially
because science
especially
as
the
scientific theories
especially the new
change.
80s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially the
Yeah.
new
Yeah.
80s. Yeah. That's what the position of the new 80s.
Yeah. Exactly. So basically, and that's the thing. Like all these theories, scientific theories, their job is to explain or help us survive, or benefit from like the knowledge, the limited knowledge that we have. Because the ultimate truth is with Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Like we don't know like actually what's going on. He's the only one who knows.
Yep.
So
Yep. Exactly.
and
Exactly.
this is the attitude that Muslims should have, which is that we don't really care what
Yeah.
science has to say. If you can use it, great. If
Yeah.
you cannot, then whatever, right?
Yeah, actually, that is pretty much
But
similar to my own position. So I just use science if it's useful, but if it's not, then yeah, the Quran is still the authority to me. The Quran and Sunnah is still going to be my authority. It's going to override anything that science says. Okay,
yeah,
that's pretty much it. Yeah.
yeah. Exactly. Brother Dread Insight says, according to the Quran, the heavens and the earth was once a joint fatak entity before separate both of them. Sounds like singularity. Yeah, actually, you know what? It's interesting. There's actually a commentary on Ibn Kathir, and I think he quotes Ibn Abbas regarding this. And what's interesting is that I don't know whether this hadith is authentic or not. If any student of knowledge is watching, please correct me if it is not. So I believe he says that someone asks him, and he gives a very interesting explanation, which is that uh, he also explains that yes, basically before heaven and earth were joined together, and then they were separated. So which is very similar to like the Big Bang theory or singularity. So yes, it's true. Now I think the problem with this argument will be that a lot of ex-Muslims or murtad will say that but this is already known, right? This is mentioned in the Bible. This is mentioned in like the Hindu scriptures and whatnot.
It's not.
So
It's not mentioned in the Bible. I can tell you that it's not mentioned in the Bible.
really, I think there are some verses that mention this that like
No, no,
we
no,
expanded it.
not even close. Nope,
Okay,
nope, nothing
it
of
could
the
be. I
sort.
don't
Only
know.
the Quran does it.
I think
Yeah. I don't know about the Hindu text, but I can tell you with certainty, with absolute certainty, with 200% certainty that it's not in the Bible.
okay. Yeah, it's possible. I think, yeah, but in terms of like this type of information, like the how would the prophet know this anyway, right? So that's the issue here. But
Yep,
still,
exactly,
like because
exactly.
like this thing could have been known. I think it was known by some Greek philosophers in the past. So yeah, I think we have to be careful on how we use it. But as far as I understand
Yeah,
it, I think there are some like hadith in regards to this that does mention. I don't know whether they're authentic or not, so I can't really speak to that. Oh, brother Aladdin
yeah.
is here. Assalamu alaikum, bro. How are you?
Sheikh
Sheikh
is
Aladdin.
here. Waalaikum salam warahmatullahi. Assalamualaikum, brother. Yes,
Assalamu alaikum, bro.
this is our very knowledgeable Sheikh. Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
your brother.
He will
So
deny that he's
so
a
yeah,
Sheikh,
that's
though.
he's very knowledgeable. Alhamdulillah.
He is very knowledgeable,
So
mashallah. Yeah.
so basically, our position is that we say what is true or false based on Quran and Sunnah. We don't accept science. Only see science as like something useful, and yeah, that's it. That's
Yes.
the position that we should take. And but what Ali Dawah was saying is also not correct, because he's saying that science is like constantly changing. Yes, he's talking about scientific theories, but not scientific facts. Scientific facts don't really change. Scientific facts basically means normal
Yes.
facts that we can see, observe. Like for example, I can observe this thing being black and whatnot. you know so scientific facts don't
Yes,
change, but
that's right.
theories change. Yes. So but either way, we don't accept scientific theories anyway, so I don't know like what his point is. But regardless, let's continue, inshallah.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So my point is what? You cannot come and say this verse here is a scientific miracle, it's a scientific fact. Why? Not because the Quran is wrong, because science changes, number one. Number two, who told you that verse in the Quran is talking about what you're ascribing to it?
Yeah, on this point, I think I agree. If he's saying that, if you're giving an interpretation of a verse that doesn't match with what the scholars have said, then yeah, I fully agree. Uh,
Yeah.
However, when he says that science changes constantly, I think he should make a clarification, which is
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
he's talking about
He's
scientific
talking about
theories, not scientific
scientific
facts.
theories, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
scientific theories.
I'm gonna assume the best and say that maybe he's talking about scientific theories, but yeah, still I do think that he should have maybe clarified it better. But yeah, let's continue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Simple as that. So that's why I repeat it one more time for my fans, those Islamophobes. The scientific argument, scientific miracles in the Quran is debunked. And we as Muslims, guess what? It doesn't bother us to the least. You know why? Because Alhamdulillah, you know what's very interesting? People are flocking to Islam. Isn't that crazy? Oh, you
That is true. Like I have noticed that I don't know if you saw like brother Sheikh Uthman's video with like Sneeko. Did you watch that?
Oh yeah, of
Bro, are you
course
there?
I did. Of course I did. And he got yeah, yes. Can you
Tafsir
get
of
me? Sorry,
Asadi
can you hear me?
gift.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
he
can
got
hear
a
you.
tafsir outside. I was so jealous when I saw that. You know how expensive that book, that set is? It's super expensive in
Yeah,
Malaysia. I you know
yeah.
I'm
I
actually
don't
trying
think
to
I
save
we
up.
have any kind
Save
of
up.
English translation of that here in Bangladesh.
Is it cheap? Because if it is, I would like to buy it from Bangladesh instead of
No,
here.
it
Because
doesn't
in Malaysia,
exist. The English translation we cannot find it here. We do have a lot of
huh?
like
Why?
Ibn Taymiyyah's. I mean, like the thing is that mostly like Bangladesh, you have to understand, like Bangladesh is basically a lot of kind of like Deobandi oriented in a sense. There's a lot of kind of like
Okay.
Indian
All
scholars
right.
that are more influential
All
here,
right. All right.
so we don't get a lot of kind of Arabic scholars. Like for example, I'm like a Salafi, right? And like for example, oftentimes we would get like labeled as like Wahhabi and whatnot. But
I can imagine. I can imagine. Yeah, we have that
yeah,
too
so
in Malaysia, but we have that problem too in Malaysia, Aki. But the thing is, Alhamdulillah, the people of the Manhaj Salaf, they are quite strong here, mashallah. Yeah. But there is a
yeah,
constant battle between
yeah,
those who adhere to the Salaf and those who are
yeah,
Sufis. Okay, here in Malaysia, we have those who are inclined to Sufism. So you have all these weird people going, singing and dancing, and then they're claiming that this is salawat and this gives barakah to the
Yeah,
prophets. This kind of,
yeah,
this kind of people.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So for example, like, yeah, as I was saying, so, so, so basically, like, brother Ali Aladdin says, Sheikh Uthman didn't answer the question about Ajipta and Ajipta, correct? I'm not sure what
which
you're
I
referring
don't,
to,
I don't remember.
but
Yeah, I'm not sure, but Shay, I'm not really sure what you're referring to, Shay. I think
yeah,
I don't think I
better see the
recall this.
video.
Yeah,
Better
I
see the
think I
video.
probably need to watch it again. Probably need
Yeah,
to
yeah,
watch the video later to understand that. Yeah,
yeah. So when it comes to brother Ali Dawud, I think the thing that he got wrong here is that basically he's trying to kind of dismiss science as a whole. I think that's a mistake. While
yeah,
it is true that scientific theories change, scientific facts don't change. Like, for example, if scientists have found out that atoms exist, unless Allah Subhanahu wa Taala changes that, it is very, very unlikely that that's going to change, right? So those are scientific
yeah,
facts. Those don't change, but scientific theories change. Yes, that's true. But the thing is that we don't accept, or we shouldn't accept scientific theories anyway. Like our, like, kind of like epistemology is based on Quran and Sunnah, right? Or what we
yes,
know to be true is based on Quran and Sunnah. So
exactly.
that's the main point that I have against Brother Ida. But other than that, I think we basically agree with this other point regarding how, like, these type of arguments are often used when they don't match with the Quran and Sunnah, and people still use
Yeah,
them and make up their own tafsir. Then that's a problem, and we do agree with that.
yes,
Yeah,
it is definitely a problem. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's continue, inshallah.
You Murtads, you ex-Muslims, all you hostile Christians, Islamophobes, not all of you, Zionists, some of you are Jews, some of you Hindus, all of
I
you
like the way
guys
you
have
call
got
out
your
the
tails
groups.
between your legs, walking away. And you know what's interesting? People are coming to Islam because of its intolerance. What happened to, me saying that, and we are proud of that? And I'll repeat it again. Yes, we are proud of that.
Yes,
Okay,
definitely.
okay.
We are proud of that. Yep, I'm definitely
Brother,
proud of it.
yeah, yeah, of
I'm
course, like,
definitely proud.
we're proud of, like, our own tradition, but the thing is
Yeah.
that what he's saying is, like, it's a bit problematic. Like, if brother Knowledge Note was here, like, he would be very angry with some of the things he said.
Why?
uh
Because brother Ali Dawah is
no,
simply
no, 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 let me explain what I mean.
yeah,
Did you notice what he said?
yeah,
It's intolerance. What happened to, and you know what's interesting? People are coming to Islam because of this intolerance.
He says that people are coming to Islam because of intolerance. No, like,
I think
people
he's
are
being
coming to Islam
sarcastic
because
here
it's the
actually.
truth, because Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has opened their heart to it, because of the fitrah. Like,
Yeah, but I
it's not because
but
of the
actually
intolerance. Why
I
would
think
people be acceptable
yeah,
to, like, intolerance? That doesn't make sense.
yeah, yeah. I mean I think to be fair to brother Ali Dawah, I think he's trying to be sarcastic. He's trying to provoke the these groups, So that is why he used that word. But I think what he actually meant is that people are coming to Islam because Islam's truth is
Yeah.
clearly showing that the things that we see in the Western societies, especially, is collapsing. Like for example, the LGBTQ, RSTU, VWXYZ groups, the woke
Mhm.
culture that is now prevalent in the West. Islam has stood firm against this. Okay, so I think this is what brother Ali Dawah, to be fair to him, meant by intolerance, because we are intolerant to these groups. We are intolerant to this woke culture, to this
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
liberalism.
like, I understand what you're trying to, like,
Yeah,
look
yeah,
at the best, or try to assume the best of him.
yes,
And yeah, it could
yes,
be the case that maybe he just misspoke. But as far as I can see, like, the
yeah,
way he's speaking about Islam is like he's saying that, oh, we have these controversial things. This is the reason why people like Andrew Tate are embracing Islam. This is the reason why Sneaker is embracing Islam. But I don't
yeah,
think that's true. Like, they're embracing Islam because it's the truth, right? It's the haq, it's the truth.
yeah.
Like, why
Of
would
course, it's the truth,
people
but
be embracing Islam
you
if,
have to be.
like, yeah,
Yes, yes. I mean, in order to come to the truth, there must be an asbab for it. There must be a reason for it. Like for
hey,
example,
Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is bringing them to
our brother
Islam, right?
Andrew Tate, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like for example, like
So
brother Andrew Tate, why did he chose Islam? Because he says that Islam promotes masculinity. Islam it's against feminism, it's against the liberalism of the West. So these things kind of you know made him interested in Islam, and eventually he studied Islam, and he decided to choose Islam because of course, the truth. Okay,
Mm.
but why did he choose Islam? Why did he decided to study Islam? Because of this reaction to this so-called woke culture, and I believe that
Yeah.
for Brother Tico is the same thing as well. Yeah, it's something similar
So
along those
brother
lines.
PJ says that he might mean people are joining is because Islam doesn't take disrespect unlike other religion. That's the reason entertain like
Yeah,
Islam.
I
Yeah, but
think I do
there's
agree
a difference
with
between
that.
like liking something and like saying that it's the truth. Like the reason what like reason what many people embrace Islam is because of their fitrah, right? And also the reason to Islam,
Yes,
and
of
because it's the
course.
truth, and that's mainly the one of the main reason why people embrace Islam. I don't think it's because Islam is controversial, and the problem here is that if we go around saying that because Islam is controversial, therefore it's true, it doesn't follow, because the thing is that
Yeah, yeah,
Christianity is also
yeah.
like controversial, right? But doesn't
Yeah,
mean that you're
I
gonna
think
embrace
maybe
Christianity now.
yeah, it's possible that I think it's possible that people might misinterpret what he said. So yeah, you have a point. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm gonna assume the best and think that maybe even if like maybe what he's saying is that maybe I misread it, maybe, but I don't think it's right to say that
mm.
the reason like people like embrace Islam is because of you know it's controversial, because the thing
Yeah,
is that
yeah.
a lot of things can be controversial.
Like I
Is
said, I think what he meant was basically Islam's intolerance, and I use this word in inverted commas, intolerance towards
so
homosexuals,
that's the thing. Like Islam is
intolerance
not
towards
intolerant. Islam
woke
is
culture.
Islam preaches kindness, love, mercy, right? So why would you like describe our religion as intolerant
I
or
mean,
something like bad?
in terms of being uncompromising. I mean, in terms of not. I mean, look at how the
Yeah,
Christians behave
but
now.
even
Okay,
uncompromising in a fair way, in a just way, right?
of
I
course.
mean,
There's not.
so
I don't mean in an unjust way, or mistreating those sort of people. Okay, I mean it in the Islamic way. Okay, yeah, standing
yeah,
firm or principles. That's what I meant.
yeah. So yeah, exactly. Like and like this is the reason why I think there's some issues with what he said, and I disagree with the way he said it, because I think
Yeah,
what
probably
is
with
Islam
the
reason.
how probably how he said it. Yeah, probably how he said it might be misconstrued or might be taken out of context. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That's
yeah,
the thing is that when it comes to Islam, first of all, Islam is the truth, and Islam establishes justice and mercy. Prophet
yep,
Prophet ﷺ showed mercy. He's our best example of mercifulness and forgiveness. He
yes,
established justice, and he even forgave like some of the people, and he changed people's life. So Islam is a force for
yep,
good. Like I don't think it's right to say that Islam is people should embrace Islam because it's controversial, or
yep.
give this kind of like negative connotations, because the thing is that a lot of people will be put off by that if you go around saying that, because you need to give dawah in a way
Yeah,
that would
but
be appealing to people, right? So
yeah,
I
that's
think
true.
I think
That's true. His name
I think
Ali Dawah after all.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, if he were doing apologetics, then that would be a different story. But he's not. You see, he's claiming to do da'wah, so it's different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I think the way he says is problematic, but let's continue, inshallah.
yeah. And I'm back. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
What happened to, me saying that, and we are proud of that? And I'll repeat it again. Yes, we are proud.
Brother Dread Insight says praises Islam because Muslims stand up against LGBTQTVZ.
Yeah,
And
that was what I was saying.
yes, where are the
Yeah,
Christians?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like the thing is that the whole like sodomy thing is definitely bad, but that's not like the main feature of Islam. The main feature of Islam is Tawheed, right? It's Tawheed. I don't think we should like make
It
it
is
the main.
tawhid and much. Yes, yes, of course it is tawhid, and of course the main thing is always tawhid, and it's also much more than that. But of course, essentially, it's about tawhid. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. Uh, I think the problem nowadays is that with like the rise of the like right wing kind of like man's movement, I think the issue is that oftentimes they propagate Islam in the wrong manner. If I'm gonna be
you
completely
mean the
blunt,
red pill movement, right? The red pill
yeah,
movement.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like for example, especially
yeah,
like Andrew Tate, like I think if you see like some of the people and some of the duas, the way they speak about Islam is like it's not the right way. Like you're painting Islam as if like somehow it's bad, and because of this, a lot of like enemies of Islam use this to say that, oh look, we were right all along. We were right all along. Look at this. Look at what they're saying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
this approach needs to be toned down a bit. I feel like we have to show people
But
that Islam is
we
a
don't
religion
need
of mercy. Yeah.
we don't need this approach, brother, because we need to show those kuffar that we are strong against them and we will take a stand against them. Yeah. That is why
Yeah, but
I wouldn't just simply
yeah,
use the soft way. There's also
there's a difference between
the strict way.
yeah, there's a
Yeah.
difference between
Yeah.
saying that what some of the liberals have established is wrong. Like saying that
Yeah.
is a powerful argument against their position. That's true, but ultimately, Islam is a force for good, right? So, for
It
example, if we
is.
say
Yeah.
that like
Of course.
LGBTQ thing is wrong, and we establish
Yeah.
that, that's great. But we also need to establish
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
Islam promotes kindness. It promotes tawheed, oneness of God, and this is something that everyone kind of like acknowledges. It promotes justice. It promotes fairness. Like,
Yes.
for example, it promotes charity. These things are,
Yes.
when you combine these things, it makes a much more powerful argument than to simply if he becomes edgy for the sake of being edgy, you know. But anyway,
Yeah,
I think I understand what you're trying.
I think he was purposely being AG because he's attacking, those groups that you mentioned earlier. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
purposely
that may
doing
be the
that.
case.
Yeah.
That may be the case. But yeah, I definitely don't agree with him when he says things like, the reason people are
Yeah.
embracing Islam is because of controversy, or because the thing is that might give people the wrong idea
Yeah, he's
about Islam.
actually, if you look at it another way, to be fair to him again, I think he's just trying to provoke those groups of people that he mentioned earlier. So that is why he behaved this way.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
Did you see the debate that he had with Pussy? That was
Actually,
hilarious.
I have some clips from that. We're gonna take a look at that because it's actually relevant to
That
the
was
discussion.
hilarious, the way they would eat the grapes and
And
that
the
was
thing is
funny.
that
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we'll discuss more. But on this point, like I
All
don't
right.
agree
All
with
right.
like the and the way he's like
Yeah,
portraying Islam as like
I
controversial.
understand. I understand why you wouldn't agree with him. Yeah, but it's still hilarious to see that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay,
Anyway,
let's
yeah, let's
continue.
continue. Yeah.
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 Proud of that.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
and you know what I'm talking about. Alhamdulillah, in Islam, there is that capital punishment. We are proud of that. Alhamdulillah. Every legislation in the Quran and the Sunnah, we are
I
proud
always
of
like
that.
him.
And
I like to hear him say that. I really like that. I like the way he says it.
Okay, okay, I'm gonna quote a hadith from the Prophet. Now, I'm not entirely sure whether I think this hadith is sahih, but please correct me, brother Aladdin, if you're in the chat. Which is, there's a hadith by the Prophet where he basically said that the people are basically like I think he was sitting down in like a fire, like I think campfire
Okay.
or something like that, and a
Okay.
lot of flies were basically jumping into the fire. So Prophet said that I think something along the line of I'm basically so many of the people are like those flies. They're trying to jump into the hellfire, and I'm trying to stop it, or something
Mm.
along that line. Paraphrase it. Please correct me if it's wrong. But
This
I think
hadith
this is
sounds
something
familiar,
the
but I
gist of
can't
the hadith,
remember the matan.
right?
Yeah, I can't remember the
So,
matan, but it
so
sounds familiar.
basically, the point is that I don't think we should be happy with like people dying. Like for example, if someone becomes an apostate, I don't
Yeah.
think that's something that should be celebrated. So I understand why he's saying this in the context of the video that he made. I think it makes sense for him to say, because apostate prophet was using it to like, oh look, Islam is evil because of this. I think he's trying to
Yeah.
turn the table on that,
Yeah,
and I understand that.
exactly.
But the thing is that I don't think you should use that, because the thing is that the people like David Wood is going to use that. They made a whole like remix. Did you hear that?
Yeah, they made they made a song out of it, right? They actually made a song
When
out
people
of
say
it.
things like
Yeah.
that, they're gonna be put off by Islam, right? So it's a problem. It's a genuine
Yeah,
problem. I think.
of course.
I don't think we should
I
say
can
things.
see why you say that. Yeah. I can see why you say that. But I think I repeated something like this along those lines when I had my debate with Apusi. I actually mentioned, Islam has apostasy laws, and I'm proud of it. I actually followed the same tone. Just to piss Apusi
Yeah,
off. Yeah.
I mean, yes, sure. Again, I would advise you to not use this kind of language, and I would
Yeah.
advise Brother Ali
Yeah.
though to just do the same. But I
Yeah,
understand
yeah.
why, like
Understand,
you said,
understand.
use that in that debate and why he's using it
Yeah,
here. But still, like,
yeah, yeah.
but this here he's not like debating apostle
Yeah,
prophet.
it's not,
Like
it's not, it's not, it's not. Yeah, it's not something that I will use, obviously, unless if it's
yeah,
necessary. Okay,
and
okay.
the brother
So
has like a million subscribers, so it's I don't think it's right to use talk about Islam in this manner.
yeah, I think he
But
should. Yeah, I think moving forward, I think Brother Ali Dawah should change his tone a bit because now he has already about 1 million views as viewers,
mhm,
subscribers, and he's already like he's pretty much an internet personality now, on par with
yeah,
perhaps PewDiePie or Mr. Beast, in our version of things. So he should
I mean,
perhaps
PewDiePie is a lot
soften his
bigger, I think.
approach. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know, I
yeah.
know. I'm saying in terms of apologetics, in terms of dawah, he's definitely Ali Dawah is definitely among there. Okay, I mean even Sheikh Uthman doesn't have that many subscribers. Okay, so and he's very
Yeah.
popular. So Ali Dawah is like one of the first Muslim apologists slash da'is who have reached 1 million. Okay, so
Mm,
he's pretty much our version of PewDiePie or Mr. Beast, right? So because he has reached that level, he should change his approach and maybe perhaps soften his stance now, because he's going to be a role model for younger viewers. Okay, because younger viewers are going to see his channel and say, "Oh, this guy has 1 million views. I should listen to what he say.
mm,
I should do what he does. I should follow what he says." You see, so he's
yeah.
going to be. He has become a role model. So he shouldn't. I think you may be right in that sense. He shouldn't be too harsh now. He shouldn't, mock the disbelievers. I understand why he does it, but since you have
Mm,
already reached that level, perhaps you should. My advice to you, brother Ali Dawah, if you are listening to this, is that perhaps you should change your approach a bit now, because you have become a role model. Yeah, not just for non-Muslims, but also for not just for Muslims, but also for perhaps even non-Muslims who are watching your video. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And that's my advice to him as well. But yeah, let's continue, inshallah. And
No, no, you're watching this and
yeah,
biting your tongue out of your fingers out of rage, like Allah says in the Quran. Die in your rage. Millions and thousands of people are coming to Islam. Alhamdulillah. What happened to all your arguments of Islam mistreats women? Islam says this punishment for ex-Muslims. Islam says da da da. Oh, look how bad it is. People are still flocking to Islam. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Brother Aladdin, I think he says he puts it right. Was that having millions of followers doesn't make you expert in
Yeah,
Islam or scholars of Islam.
yeah.
He doesn't have
I know, I know, I
responsibility.
know, Shay. I know, I know, Shay. That's not
Yeah,
what I meant. I'm just saying that because he has achieved this, so he's pretty much like a role model for the younger generation. So
I think you're
the
talking social influence, right?
yeah,
Because the
social,
thing is
yeah.
that, yeah,
What I meant is he says become a social influencer now. Okay, I mean
yeah,
once you reach
yeah,
1 million views and above, obviously you're pretty much up there with the young. Okay, and you're regarded as a very influential person. Okay,
mm,
okay. So that is why we shouldn't disregard this. We shouldn't just dismiss brother Ali Dawah just because he may or may not have knowledge in Islam. I don't know. Wallahu alam. I think he has done some good work. There
mm,
are things which I may or may not agree with him, but I think overall I have no issues with him. Okay, so
mm.
I feel that maybe it's just his approach. Yeah, I think maybe his approach is not suitable now. That's all. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that like I don't think he needed to like say it the way he did, but I understand why he might have said it, but he needs
Yeah,
to tone it
yeah,
down. Is basically
yeah. Definitely, definitely. Because I think the situation has changed for him because he's a very powerful influence now, so he has to be careful. Like what like a certain uncle says, with great power comes great responsibility.
that's true.
A fictional uncle. Yeah.
Uncle Ben.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
So
let's
with great, you
continue.
have to always keep this I mean, although it's fictional, even though it's from the comics, it does have great meaning, doesn't it? I mean, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, I mean
Okay.
it's a good
Yeah.
line. But let's continue, inshallah. Let's
Yeah.
finish this.
Yeah. Right. That's right. Yeah.
It's as simple as that. And we praise our Lord. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, when people are coming in multitudes to Islam, Alhamdulillah, we praise. All your efforts that you did for 10 years, it's all gone in the bin, not even the recycle bin. You can't even recycle it. It's gone to waste, like poo.
He's right
It's
though.
gone. Khalas. People are flocking to Islam.
I mean, I'll give him one thing. Like he's entertaining. Both him and brother
I
Mohammed
think that's what
Hijab
he
are very
meant.
entertaining to
I
watch.
I think that is what he meant. what I think he was trying to achieve, right? That's what he's trying to achieve. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, that's the thing, right? There's a lot of like really good scholars or students of knowledge on YouTube. Uh, like for example, Ustad Abdur Rahman Hassan is one of them. I think he's someone I actually do respect. He has a lot of knowledge. He constantly talks about Islam, reads
Mm,
Islamic book, and things like this.
mm, mm.
But sadly, people like him are not as popular as Ali Dawah. Muhammad Hijab. Again, I'm not like knocking brother Ali Dawah. I think he's trying to be entertaining. He's an entertainer. That's what he's saying.
You have to
Yeah,
keep in
yeah.
mind that
So
people will watch David Wood more than people will watch, an evangelical like
yeah,
I don't know, maybe like let's say well, Ravi Zacharias back in the day. People are
yeah.
not going to watch Ravi Zacharias. People are going to watch more of David Wood. Why David Wood? Because David Wood is entertaining. You have to admit that. Even though his nasty attacks and nasty claims about Islam, he is entertaining. Okay, he knows how to stir people's emotions, right? So even I learn a lot from the way that he presents his videos, and I try to even copy that. I try to incorporate the way that he presents certain facts into my own videos as well.
Yeah, brother
So
Aladdin also
yeah,
mentioned this, and
yeah,
I think it's
yeah,
correct in a way. But
yeah.
again, like
But in the end,
he's
yeah, in
basically
the
an
end,
entertainer, not a scholar. But at the same time, like
YouTube is about entertainment, right? Yeah, in
yeah,
the end, YouTube is about entertainment. It's about entertaining the masses, and of course, we as me especially as an apologist, I use the platform for
mhm.
spreading knowledge. But there are also people who spread knowledge, and at the same time, they try to be entertaining, whether they are conscious of it or not. And but the Ali Dawah, you have to admit, he is entertaining. Okay, that's the reason
Yeah.
why he has a million
I
views,
mean, I'll say he's entertaining, but
subscribers.
I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he's being too entertaining.
Perhaps, yeah, perhaps, yeah. But maybe that is his intention. He wants to stir the pot, so to speak. Okay,
Yeah, I understand.
so
I
that is
understand.
his style. Yeah, that is his style. Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that is why
So
people. That is why people are going to watch Ali Dawah more than some. Unfortunately, some scholar of Islam. Yeah, I mean, someone knowledgeable in Islam are not going to get many subscribers. Unfortunately, this is a sad reality. Okay,
yeah,
for YouTube especially, you have to be
yeah,
entertaining.
yeah.
In
At
the
the
end,
same
you
time,
have to
like
be entertaining.
because he's talking about the
Yeah.
religion, he should be careful when he does talk about the religion. That's my advice to
Yeah,
him.
yeah, I know,
And
I know.
yeah,
Yeah, I
let's
know.
continue, inshallah.
So me
I
saying
mean,
the argument of
yeah.
signs and
Sorry,
miracles
go
is
ahead.
debunked, it is debunked. And guess what? We don't even need it. We don't even need it. Alhamdulillah. So an example and nasiyah to give to all of you guys, alhamdulillah, is very simple. You do not read into the Quran. We do not make that mistake by reading, and this verse means that. Now,
Yeah, that's true, and we all agree that people shouldn't like make commentary on the Quran or
Yep,
interpret verses of the
yep,
Quran
yep.
based on their own whims and desires. I think we all agree with that.
Exactly.
We have to
Yep.
use the
Of course.
scholarly
Of
method
course.
and stick to that.
Yes.
is there certain facts, for example, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the depths of the ocean, where when if you put your hand up, there are layers and layers of darkness, we can say, wow, that is very interesting because now recent discoveries do show that. So I'm not saying totally you can't use it, but I'm saying to use science as a yardstick, this is wrong. Look,
Okay, so I love how he's like he like kind of like talked about this that you cannot use science changes constantly, but then kind of like contradicts himself by saying that no, actually you can use this in some cases. So I think again, like I said, I think in the even in this case, I think what he's trying to say is that basically you have to interpret verses of the Quran based on the scholarly method. And
Yeah.
if you use the scholarly
Yeah.
method, you will see that there are some verses that the scholars have understood that does match with science. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
the verse he's talking about, I'm gonna share some of it actually.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
so basically, the verse is talking about, I think it's Quran 24 to 39.
Okay.
Okay, let me share the screen. Here we go. Continue. Okay, this is the verse he's talking about. 124:39. As for the disbelievers, their deeds are like a mirage in a desert, which the
Which
30
be
perceives as water. But when they approach it, they find it be nothing. Instead, they find Allah there in the hereafter, ready to settle their account. And Allah is swift in reckoning. 24:30 it says, 24:40 it says, or their deeds are like the darkness in a deep sea, covered by waves upon waves. This is what it's talking about. Waves upon waves, topped by dark clouds, darkness upon darkness. If one stretches out their hand, they can hardly see. Whoever Allah does not bless with the light will have no light. So here,
Mhm.
Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is basically using kind of like an analogy, or yeah. So basically, he's like using an analogy,
Yes.
or he's described the ocean as, or their deeds are like the darkness in the deep sea, covered by waves upon waves, toppled
Mm.
by dark clouds. So
Top by
here,
dark crowds.
many scholars have interpreted this, like Imam Tabari and others, and that I didn't find anyone kind of like saying that, you know, this has any other meaning, meaning that like, it basically means the how Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says it means. Basically, it means that it is in a real sense, right? Of course, I think Imam Tabari. I have a translation here. It's not a very good translation, so there may be mistakes here, but let me share
Hmm.
it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Let me share the screen. There we go. So basically, I basically translated this using kind of like a translator, but I think you can get some of idea of what he's trying to say. But if
Mhm.
there's a mistake, please do correct me. So Imam Tabari basically explains in this ayah, as he says, and this is another parable that God says forth for the deeds of the unbelievers. The Almighty says, and the likeness of the deed of of these unbelievers, in that they acted upon error, corruption, misguidance, and confusion among their works in them, and without guidance, is like darkness in a murky sea, and attributing the sea to the deep, describing it as deep and abundant in water. The depth of the sea is mostly covered by, he says, the sea is covered by waves. He says, above the wave is another wave, and that covers it. Above, and he says, above the second wave that covers the first wave is clouds. Now, so he made the darkness an example of their deeds, and the idyllic sea an example of the heart of the unbelievers. Now, this is actually a very beautiful
Mm.
kind of like verse of the Quran. Basically, what Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is saying, and if you actually understand the science behind it, it actually makes the verse even more beautiful. So basically, what Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is saying, that this believer's heart is basically like when someone is in the depth of ocean, where the ocean is very dark, and you cannot even see your own hand, and over the
Yeah.
ocean you have waves, and on top of that you have even on top of it you have more waves. So waves upon
Yeah.
waves, and on top of it you have
Yeah.
the sky. So
Yeah.
here it's actually a very real depiction of what the ocean is actually like in the real world,
Yes. Yes,
because in
that's
the
right.
real world you have these things called internal waves and you have external waves. So
Yes.
once you understand that, and you see that what Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is trying to say, it makes perfect
Yeah.
sense. As a matter
Yeah.
of fact, it beautifies the Quran.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. And this is actually also scientifically accurate, as the
Yeah.
scholars have explained it. So here we have a perfect combination of what science describes and what the Quran says,
Yeah.
and the scholars also describe, which is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
perfect description of how the ocean actually works. So that's the thing. Like the thing, I don't think so basically we can use this argument against atheists to
Yeah.
say that how did the prophet know this? Like
Yeah. I
it's
mean,
not
he was
possible that
living
we
in a
say.
desert. He was
Yeah,
living in a desert in the middle of Arabia. There was no sea
yeah,
to
exactly.
reach. So to
Yeah,
study
exactly.
even. So how would it be possible for the Prophet Salam Wasallam to know about this description of the sea? Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
Let me show an article by Art Observatory. Let me pull it up.
Okay.
There we go. They basically explain how oceans have different layers of waves. Let me share the screen. Here, this is from Earth Observatory. Waves above and below water. So basically, NASA, they basically took a picture of an ocean. They saw how like these waves behave. So basically, you have these internal waves that are beneath the ocean,
Yeah.
and you have
Yeah.
external waves which is above the surface. So if you look at the
Ah,
picture,
okay.
can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah. Yeah, I can
So
see
you
it.
see
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like this. There's this ripple here. So
Yeah.
these are like the signs of the internal waves going down underneath the sea, and then you have
Yeah.
atmospheric waves. These are like the waves on the surface. Now the reason why
Yeah.
this is happening is because there's a bigger waves underneath that's going on, and because this wave is
Yeah.
going downwards, this wave is moving towards this direction. It's affecting the outer water or the water on the surface, and it is resulting in this kind of like smaller kind of like ripples.
Yeah. That's
However,
right.
when it comes
Yeah.
to other waves on the ocean floor or on the upwards,
Yeah.
you have bigger waves,
Yeah.
waves like these atmospheric waves.
Yeah.
So that's what they observed, and they basically say the following. Let me pull it up. Okay, here we go. Uh, do you want to read this?
Yeah, sure. Let
Actually,
me
no,
read
no.
it. Okay.
Sure, sure.
The three paragraphs. Okay, just highlight the ones that you want me to read. Okay, right. So, okay, let me start. Internal waves form because the ocean is layered. Deep water is cold, dense, and salty, while shallower waters is relatively warmer, lighter, and fresher. The differences in density and salinity cause layers of the ocean to behave like different fluids. When tides, currents, and other large scale effects of Earth's rotation and gravity drag water masses over some sea floor formations, it creates wave actions within the sea that are similar to those happening in the atmosphere. If you were on a boat, you will not necessarily see or feel internal waves because they are not expressed at the surface in different wave heights. Instead, they show up as smoother and rougher water surfaces that are visible from airplanes and satellites. As internal waves move through the deep ocean, the lighter water above flows up and down the crests and troughs. Surface water bunches up over the troughs and stretches over the crests, creating alternating lines of calm water at the crest and rough water at the troughs. Calm, smooth waters reflect more light directly back to the satellite, resulting in a bright, pale stripe along the length of the internal wave. The rough waters in the trough scatter right, scatter light in all directions, forming a dark line. There are definitely ocean internal waves in this image, said physical oceanographer Nico Jones of the University of Western Australia. We have measured them off the coast of Ningaloo with instruments in the water. The different directions of the wave fronts are most likely due to the different seafloor slope directions in this region. She notes that internal waves play an important role in global ocean circulation and mixing, which is critical to understanding the ocean's role in climate and in the movement of nutrients and carbon from the depths to the surface and back. Jones and colleagues also study internal waves for their potential impact on drill rigs and other offshore structures. Yeah, there you go.
So
Yeah.
yeah, basically, the Quran is accurate uh, in describing how the ocean actually is. So again, you can make a very good argument based on this, which is that how did the Prophet know this?
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's the thing. And there are also a book written on this. It's from the Springer Journal.
Yeah.
You can read about it. It's a book by Stanislaw R. Marcel. He's an oceanologist.
Ah,
Uh,
interesting.
he basically describes how these waves function
Okay.
underneath the sea,
Okay.
and he basically says the following. Let me share. See if I can share this. Um, Here we go. Share this. Okay, so this is what he says. The atmosphere and the actually, you know what? Let me just share the PDF. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Share screen. Window, enter screen. No, no. Chrome tab. Okay, here we go. Let me make it
Yep.
bigger so we can all see, inshallah. Okay, so this is the book. This is published by uh, the Springer. This is written by Marcel. He's basically an oceanographer, I think. Internal gravity waves in the shallow seas. It's
Right.
published by Springer, which is a journal, scientific journal, well
Okay.
established, very well established scientific journal.
Mm.
Stain Marine Dynamics has been peer reviewed by multiple people. Oceanology, all of these people basically peer reviewed it. Let's continue.
Mm.
If you read the, I'm going to read this. So this is the preface. It says the atmosphere and the ocean form a coupled system which constantly exchange momentum, heat, water through the air-ocean's interface. The interface and ocean water are in endless motion of various scales, from microturbulence through to surface waves, tides, global currents, and internal waves, which are the subject of discussion in this book. In contrast to the surface waves, internal waves propagate through the whole fluid space, not only horizontally but also vertically. In general, ocean fluid is inhomogeneous in space and time due to a difference in water temperature, and salinity. The surface of the interface between warm and cold water, or between fish and salt water, in a continuously stratified fluid, are unstable oscillating interface forms waves which are of different types than those appearing on the free ocean surface. The amplitude of gravity internal waves within the water column are usually considerably larger than wavelengths are also much bigger than those of ordinary surface waves. So basically, he describes how these waves basically function, and he explains that these waves are actually
Yeah.
even bigger than the waves we usually see on the upper layer, or external waves, or like
Mm-hmm.
surface waves.
Okay.
So this plays a very important function in the sea. So
Mm-hmm.
basically,
Okay.
you can clearly see that what the Quran is describing is scientifically accurate. So if someone
Mm.
doesn't believe in God or whatnot, then that person is a scientific realist, then they need to explain how the Prophet would know this, right?
Yeah.
They need to
How would it possible for the prophet to describe the ocean waves so accurately in this
yeah,
manner,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
Uh, exactly, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
So you can use arguments like this, and
Yeah.
these are actually very good arguments.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I
I
think
don't
I
think you
think
should
there's no.
throw out
Yeah.
these type of arguments, because a
Yeah.
lot of people
I
have.
think there's no problem actually using this kind of arguments for the Quran. I think what Brother Ali Dawah meant was the more uh you know uh contentious ones, like
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
ozone, like when you talk about ozone layers and you associate that with
Basically,
verses in the Quran, then that's not,
basically
yeah,
he's
that's not
talking about
accurate. Yeah.
verses, interpretation of verses that is not, that goes against the scholarly kind of like tradition. I think that's what he's
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, I think that's what he meant. Yeah. Yeah. But
But
yeah,
the thing is
I
that
think yeah.
with like this verse, most scholars agree that yeah, that's what Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is saying. Like I just
Yep.
quoted Imam Tawri
Yep. Yep.
saying that
Definitely.
that's
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
as it
Mm,
says in the Quran. Right? There's really
exactly.
no other way to interpret this.
Yes. Yes.
So
That's right. That's right.
so yeah, you can use arguments like this, and I think these type of arguments can be very effective and useful.
Yep. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, but
and
as an apologist myself, I don't really use this kind of I don't really use there's science in the Quran, so the Quran is true type of arguments. Not really. I mean, when is
no,
it
it
useful, I
has nothing
do.
to do with science.
Yeah,
Like I said, remember
yeah,
what I showed
yeah,
you.
yeah.
For
I know.
example,
I mean things which are congruent to science, as I put it, right? So
no, no, no.
I only use it when the topic arises. Otherwise, I wouldn't
Yeah,
really use
I know
this as my
what you
main
mean. Like for
arguments.
example, this
Yeah,
argument is a sound argument.
yeah.
This
It is. It
argument is a
is.
sound argument. Like for
Yes,
example,
it
you can
is.
use it when it comes to prophecies or anything
Yeah.
else. I think
Yeah,
it's a very
exactly.
effective argument.
Yeah, and it also depends on your audience, right? So it's like, for example, if you're talking about biblical criticism, why would you suddenly
Mhm.
say, "Oh, the Quran is true because the Quran talks about waves"?
Mhm.
Okay, so it doesn't make any sense, right? So it
No,
depends
no,
on
that's not the
the
argument
topic.
though. The
Yeah,
argument is that if
yeah,
you believe that science is true, which is
yeah,
an
yeah.
atheist, and you
Yes,
think that
yes.
whatever says is real, then how do you explain this, right?
Yeah,
How do you
yeah.
explain
I know.
the prophet knowing that
I know.
this,
It
right?
means like I said, it depends on the audience and when you can
Hmm.
use it. You can't just simply blindly use it without context. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, I don't know what's going on in the chat. Like, are they like debating about something? But anyway, so yeah, I think the issue that kind of like Brother Ali Dawah raises is like basically uh, when you interpret verses based on your own whims and desires, and that's obviously problematic. But if you go by what the scholars have already accepted, and they don't really take issues with this, like what's the one on the ocean floor,
Yeah.
and like this, or like there's another one which is that talks about fresh water and like salt water, this kind of things, like things that are clear.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think there's anything wrong with that. Like, however, when it say things like, oh, you know, when it comes to seven heavens, which is literally a matter of the unseen, then that's definitely a problem. But let's continue, inshallah, with the rest of the video.
Quran is our yardstick. We don't say it because science changes. One day it says this, next day it says that. It's as simple as that. So that's the reason why we say there are certain things in the Quran which is like, how could a man know this? If it was from a man, not from God, who went to the depths of the ocean, yes, thousands of meters down to know that there's layers and layers of darkness. That is my point. So once again, for all my fans out there, the Islamophobes, the cowards, the little weasels, alhamdulillah, Islam is growing. Yes? Okay, for those who, like Muhammad Hijab says, who are intellectually molested, yes, it is debunked and we don't need it. Alhamdulillah, Islam can do anything and people are flocking to Islam. Our dawah videos, people are accepting Islam left, right, center. So die in your rage. That's all I wanted to say, alhamdulillah. And brothers and sisters, may Allah bless you guys, inshallah. Till next time, assalamu.
I think Brother Aladdin mentioned the verse. It's 55:19. He released the two seas meeting one another. Yeah, exactly. That's the verse I was referring to.
Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, so now that's like his video. That's like 6 minute long video. Wasn't that big? But I think in conclusion, but there's another major issue I have with like his take, and I think in order to like explain this, I need to watch like another video. We need to react to
Okay.
another video that he made.
Another
with, like,
one. Yes, we have run the stream for like how long now? 1 hour and 52 minutes.
it's not gonna take long. It's like 2 minutes. If you watch like if a few seconds, you will
Okay.
understand what I'm talking
Right.
about.
Okay. Sure. Go ahead. Yeah. Then. Yeah.
Okay, let me share the screen. Let me share the screen. Is it? Okay, here we go. All right, this one. Remember this? Brother Knowledge North already made a thing on it, but there's something I feel like I need to. It's so big.
I absolutely love this. It was so entertaining. Subhanallah.
Okay.
I just love this. Oh my god. I don't really think that he intended to debate the guy anyway. He just wanted to
Okay.
annoy him.
Now,
Okay. Yeah.
now you remember what he said about this kind of arguments. He says that who told you that this is something that you can interpret verses this way, right?
Yeah.
Now
Okay.
look at look at how he argues against apostate prophet.
Okay.
And I'm gonna
Pussy.
kind of like then I'm gonna make my comment, inshallah.
Okay, go ahead.
You know what?
Yeah.
Do you want to debate atheism in Islam?
Tell me the
You want
arguments.
to debate
Come on.
atheism in Islam?
Tell me the arguments.
Do you want to debate atheism in Islam?
Tell me the arguments which
Do you want to
destroy my
debate atheism in
position.
Islam? I will debate now the contingency argument right now. Let's go.
No.
Let's
Oh
go.
my god, it's
Is
so
this contingent?
entertaining.
You know what it means?
Yes.
You don't make the argument like this, man.
No, he never intended to make a debate against it. He just wants to annoy Apusi, and I totally understand why he did this. Okay, I mean, I don't sympathize with
Yeah, but like
Apusi
I mean,
at all. Okay,
like the argument
I
doesn't
know,
go like this.
I know you don't agree with his methods, but you know you can't help but admit that you know that idiot in the black t-shirt
Yeah,
deserves it, right?
I know he's like an idiot. Like apostate prophet is a certified idiot. No doubt
Yes,
about that.
right. Yes, that's right.
The thing is
Yeah.
that what I was talking about is basically the argument, the contingency argument that he's using.
Yeah, that's right.
Uh, yeah, so I think Brother Aladdin mentioned something. How did the Prophet know that the sky is smoke and not fog? Japanese professor, because you said that in the past, wrong scientific theories said that the sky is fog and that we knew it was smoke. Interesting. I didn't
Yeah.
know that. I have to look
Yeah.
into that,
Yeah.
inshallah.
Yeah.
Uh, So brother Dread Inside also says that I don't like his debate with Ipusi. Then someone fed Ali the fruit. So that's like how you
But
do.
I have to admit, I do enjoy watching.
It's funny. It's funny. It's entertaining. It's funny, but
Ali,
this
yeah, it
actually
is. It is.
this does harm Dawah in a sense. Like, because if a
It's not
non-Muslim
dawa.
sees
It's just
this,
it's not dawa.
then
It's just an attack
yeah,
on Apusi. You have
yeah,
to look at it that way.
yeah.
You can
But
see it as
that's
dawa
not that's
because that was
not
not
that's
Ali
not even my
Dawah's
main
intention.
point. So my
Yeah.
main
Okay.
point that I'm
All
trying
right.
to get
Okay.
to is that
Yeah, I know the way
he
that he
says
argued the point. Yeah, the
he
way that he
says
argued the
that
contingency
you
argument,
cannot
right?
like use this kind of like scientific arguments or like kind of
Okay.
like arguments from the Quran regarding
Okay.
naturalistic phenomenon. You cannot use
Yes.
that. But
Okay.
here I'm going to use contingency argument, which has nothing to do with the Quran.
But you have to keep in mind that he's talking to Apusi. Okay, so if he's talking to him, he can't use the Quran anyway. Because if he's going to use the Quran, then Apusi would just say, oh no, you
And yeah,
don't.
that's the thing. I think this is the problem. This is the problem, right? So a lot
Okay.
of these brothers, and no disrespect to any of them, a lot of them have contributed a lot to giving
Yeah.
dawah, but a lot of
Yeah.
these brothers have been brainwashed by philosophy too much.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
they have come to this
Yeah.
conclusion that somehow philosophy is superior than science, and or like somehow science is outdated or whatever. That's the
Okay.
wrong approach to take. Philosophy and
Okay.
science are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
cannot just
Yeah.
divorce one from the another.
Yeah.
They're both using rationality or logic.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna say,
Different
oh, you cannot
approach.
use
Yeah,
this kind of
different
like
approach.
scientific
Yeah.
arguments based on the
Yeah.
Quran, when the Quran does talk about those things, then you cannot use philosophical arguments either, because philosophical arguments also changes. By the way, I don't know if you know
Yeah.
this kind of contingency argument. There's 100 different versions of this argument,
Oh, I didn't know that.
and yeah,
I didn't
there's
know
like
that.
100 different, like the way kind of like Avicenna or Ibn Sina uses this argument is completely different than like Thomas Aquinas and how he uses this argument.
Oh, that's
And
interesting.
nowadays they have to even update this argument because of the atheist objection, the new kind of like scientific atheist objection of
Okay.
things like multiverse or other kind of like scientific theories that is coming up. They have to constantly update this argument,
Okay.
because what worked in the past is not going to work now.
Okay.
So like this kind of philosophical arguments are also like some kind of stale thing. It's also constantly changing. Like for example, think about the
Interesting.
fine-tuning argument that they use, right? Now, before you could easily say make this kind of argument to like an atheist and say, that, oh look, how do you explain this, right? But now atheists can simply say, oh, it's just a multiverse or whatnot. Then you have to go change the argument and say, and somehow make it compatible with this multiverse theory, right? So like that's the thing, like
Yes.
people think that somehow this kind of philosophical arguments are devoid or divorced from like this kind of like science or scientific objection, but it's not.
Right.
It's just two sides of the same coin. The same objections that these ex-Muslims and Murtads are making against the Quran and this kind of like naturalistic arguments or things that are mentioned in the Quran, they're going to make the same objection against arguments for God's existence and this type of things. Now, of course, people like Apos are like idiots. They don't know that they're not that knowledgeable. But if you're arguing against someone like a scientist, for example, someone who actually knows what they're talking about, then you're
Okay.
going to get embarrassed. Like because there's a lot of scientific objections to these philosophical arguments.
Okay.
For example, let's just continue to watch a few bit more and then we'll end it. But there's some funny moments here.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It's
Yes, it
contingent.
is.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
it's
it is.
dependent, yeah?
Relatively,
Is it
according to
dependent?
the argument, yes, it
Is it
is.
dependent?
Yes, sure.
I do
mean,
enjoy watching that.
I think I know where he took this from. He took this from like Jake when he was arguing against like Apostle Prophet. But this is not. By the way, this is not even how you formulate the argument. This is not how the argument goes. So
Okay.
first you have to establish that there is existence. That's where the argument starts. By the
Yes.
way, using ilm kalam is nowhere mentioned in the Quran. Like none of these
Yeah, of
things are
course
mentioned
not.
in the Quran.
Of course not. These are all philosophy. This
Yeah.
came later. Okay. Yeah.
This came much later. This is an innovation. This has nothing to do with Islam.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
And even if you somehow like point to this a type of God's existence, that has nothing to do with our akidah or our belief. So why is it
Yeah.
okay to use this, but not okay about to use things that are mentioned by Allah
To
subhanahu wa ta'ala
use
himself?
science. Yeah. To use
Yeah.
science. Yeah.
It's
Yeah. I understand where you're coming from. Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
It's completely inconsistent.
Yes.
Can it be any other way?
It could be, yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so it's independent. It could be any other way. It's contingent. Okay.
Okay, fine.
Wait, how is it independent? Like, what's
Can
Go
we?
ahead. Let's
okay.
do this.
Okay, 1 second. Do you accept that there is existence?
And then
Yes.
he
Thank
just
you.
repeated what
Okay,
you
there's
said.
three
Right?
kinds of existence. Yeah. Okay. There is impossible existence. There is possible existence, and there's necessary existence.
That's a
Impossible
very
existence
dumb way
is
of
a
putting
triangle
yes,
circle.
sure.
Triangle circle. 1 second. It's a triangle circle. Yeah, you're gonna need to with that water. I know you're getting nervous. You're gonna get.
So,
He is
like,
getting nervous. He is
uh,
getting nervous. I can see that.
yeah, okay, so there's a lot of things that are going wrong here. So first of all, he says that there are like 3 types of existence. Like, where's that mentioned in the Quran or the Sunnah? Like, would you get that?
Yeah, this philosophy. Yeah, this philosophy.
Like, where do you get that? And the thing is that the way kind of like the ancient kind of like philosophers, the way they argue, they basically establish everything step by step. First, they establish
Yeah.
there's existence, then they establish why it's unlikely contradictions can take place. Then they establish kind of like other things like possible existence and why. Basically, they explain the properties of an existing thing, and they say why it's more likely to be this kind of existence and how we can categorize it. Then
Yeah.
they will like logically conclude from that why you cannot have only these things in existence. Like, they will go step by step, and he's just saying, oh, there's
Yeah.
just like these things, they're necessary existence, possible existence, but you don't go like that. Like, it's he's
I understand.
packing too
Okay,
much
okay.
in this kind of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
first premise.
Yeah,
here.
but
It's
you have to keep
completely
in
wrong.
mind he's trying. But you have to keep in mind he's trying to humiliate a pussy. He's not trying to be serious. Okay, he's just trying
Yeah.
to humiliate him and trying to make fun of him.
By the way, none of this has anything to do with Islam. By the way, even if you somehow
Yeah.
could prove like this type of like
Yeah. Yeah,
God's
this
existence, it has
philosophy.
nothing to do
Yeah,
with Islam,
obviously,
Quran, Sunnah, or
obviously,
Aqidah.
yeah, obviously this kalam. Yeah, this kalam
Yeah,
knowledge. Yeah,
it's kalam. It's not something you can use.
yes, that's right.
It's an innovation, basically.
You're gonna
Yes.
get
Just
finished,
stop.
boy.
Just go with the point. Go
Man,
on.
I'm gonna be your worst nightmare. You're gonna have nightmares about me at
Yeah,
night.
yeah, sure. Go.
Oh my god, it's so entertaining, Subhano. Oh my
Yeah.
god, give me fits of giggles, man.
Can you imagine?
I really love it, man.
Imagine if like scholars like, I don't know, Sheikh Uthaymeen or someone like them like saw this. What's happening here? Oh, it's Dawah. What?
Oh my god, I'm
I mean,
coughing.
I understand why he's doing that. He's trying to be. He's an entertainer. He makes into videos.
Yeah. You have to keep in mind that he's not
He's
trying
still-
to debate at all. Okay, this is not
Yeah.
a debate. That's why
Yeah.
that you see the word debate is in quotes, right, at the top, the title.
Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
knows that this is not a debate. Okay, he's just purposely trying to humiliate him.
Yeah.
Okay? Humiliate a
Yeah.
pussy. Okay.
Yeah, and I understand that, but the thing is that you can still humiliate him without kind of like losing losing your
I
cool,
don't
or
know.
like
Yeah, I don't know about that because
like for example,
I
as much
debated
as
the fellow.
I disagree
I-
with like Daniel and
Okay.
the issues I have with him. At least when
Yeah.
in debates, he doesn't like he does mock as well. Like I'm trying to think of like let's say Abdullah Al Andalusi. Again, I don't agree with him like most of the things, but at least the way he debates is
Okay.
like he's still being funny and he's still taking jabs, but he's not like like he's not doing this.
Okay.
Whatever this is,
Yeah.
eating fruits and whatnot.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah?
Go ahead. Come on.
Okay.
Power
A
play.
triangle circle is an impossible existence. It cannot exist. So we have
Yeah.
2 things left.
Triangle sucker. What does that have to do with Islam?
What is a triangle circle? Okay, I mean this philosophy.
Possible existence and necessary existence.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
correct. Yeah. Okay. Now, do you know what contingent is? Do you know the criteria for contingency? What contingent thing
Which-
is?
By the way, the problem with this type of arguments is that after all this kind of like mental gymnastic, you still cannot get to the main point, which is our main aqidah or belief. We believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has many different attributes, and you cannot establish all of them using these type of
Yeah.
arguments.
Yeah.
So if you use those type of arguments where you're actually arguing from the Quran, if you can show that actually the Quran is from Allah, God, or it's from someone who is all knowledgeable, then it proves that Quran is from it's not written by people, it's written by God. So that's much easier way of
Yeah.
arguing, right? But
Yeah.
where if you're using arguments like this, you have to do all this mental gymnastic, and at the end of the day, it's not going to go anywhere because I highly doubt Apostle Prophet is going to be convinced by this. Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay.
We
example-
just went through that. Why do you
Okay, let's
just
go through
make
one
your
more time.
make
What
your
is it?
arguments? Make your arguments.
No,
Stop
what is
asking
it? What is it?
questions.
Let's go through it again. It
That's
has
not
to
how
be
you make an
contingent.
argument. You are supposed to make your argument
No,
instead
no,
of
no. Do
asking
you
me
know?
questions.
I'm asking you. Do you know what contingent? What's the
You're
criteria?
supposed to make your argument, not ask me questions. That's not
Hey,
how
I
it
don't
works.
know.
Just
Hey, I
make
don't
your
know.
goddamn argument.
Hey, I don't know.
I
Hey,
just
don't
told
know.
you the answer. Do you,
He didn't make an argument. Epos is another idiot. Like he didn't like there's just so many things wrong here.
No, I'm your teacher.
I just
I'm
gave you
your
the
teacher.
answer.
I'm your teacher.
Oh
I
I'm
just
my
gave you the
God.
answer. Just make your
You're my
argument. Stop being
student.
a
I have
child.
to ask you. I'm teaching a lesson. You have to know. I need to see if you're cash on. You're my
Ali
student.
Dawah,
Okay.
you are so
Contingent.
goddamn childish. Make your point. Stop
Dependent.
asking questions.
Okay. It cannot be any other way.
Like this is like the you know how sometimes like you go around like in real life sometimes people will have just like debates for no reason. Sometimes
Yeah,
they'll argue
yeah,
about things that has nothing to do with the main topic. This is
yeah,
one of those
yeah,
cases, if we be completely
yeah. You
honest.
mean
Like,
like arguments at a coffee shop or something like that? You know, so there's a random uncle debating with some other guy at a coffee shop. So it's like this.
yeah,
Yeah,
but I'm not saying like, okay, so I'm gonna be like toned out a bit. I think I understand what like Brother Ali though. I think maybe what he's trying to do is that like he's trying to argue this point, and I'm not like doubting his sincerity because I don't know what's in his heart. Uh, because I do think that he's trying to be sincere. He's trying to argue for God's existence, maybe. But the thing is that the way he's going about it, I think before then, I think they were like talking about going back and forth for a very long period of time. So it could be
yeah,
that he's maybe very frustrated by that end point, because I have seen him like arguing with other kind of like atheists, and he seemed quite relatively calm. But in this kind of discussion, he's just he kind of like lost it. I feel like
yeah. Because you
with
know
all
the
due
guy
respect
that
to him. Yeah.
because the guy he's debating with is an idiot. That's
Yeah.
why. Okay.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's a given. But personally, I think he shouldn't have engaged with him in the first place.
Yeah,
But
I
because the
know.
thing is that
Yeah.
a lot of things that happened in this debate were used
Well,
by enemies of Islam.
I did engage with with that idiot. So but I
Yeah,
felt that it was worthwhile
yeah, but like
because
you're kind of like
yeah.
more calm-headed. Like you're not eating fruits.
Was I? I did scratch my back with the miswa, if you remember.
Yeah, that's after he mentioned it, right? After he was kind of like mentioning this mocking point or whatever. So
I did mock him a bit. Okay, I did try to mock him a bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that's like proportional. Like it's gonna get crazy here.
Okay. It
Sure.
requires something else for its own existence.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you have an infinite regress of dependent things?
Okay, what does this have to do with the Quran, man? Like, again, like remember what he said. He said that you cannot use things based on your own whims or desires. And here he's using an argument that has nothing to do with the Quran or even our
Yeah.
Aqidah.
Yeah.
And like, where's the where is it going with this? If
Yeah.
this is really the case that
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
cannot use these kind of like scientific arguments, then why can you use
Yeah.
arguments like this? Like that
Yeah.
that doesn't go
Exactly.
anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm.
It's not something we can know.
At least when it comes to those kind of arguments, they're at least arguing from the Quran itself. But here he's just arguing that something that has nothing to do with the Quran. Now, this is not to say you cannot use this type of kind of like logical points or arguments to establish the falsehood of like atheism or like naturalism, right? I think you can do that. But the thing is that you have to establish that, like for example, you can use these kind of like arguments to debunk the atheist position. But the point of that should be to establish our belief, show that why
Yeah.
our belief is more logical.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
For
Yep.
example,
That's right.
to show that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran is more logical,
Yeah.
it's more rational,
Yep. Yep.
right?
That's right.
So
Yeah.
that should be the main point. Like for example, the
Mhm.
other day on Discord, I was actually talking to this kind of like open-minded atheist, and I basically asked him that what does he believe? Like, does he believe that like for example, in Islam, we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is completely he doesn't depend on anything, right? He's completely
Yeah.
independent. Like then I asked him, like, do you think that you can have a existence where everything is dependent upon each other, right? And he said
Yeah.
that he believes that everything is dependent upon energy or something like that. Then I asked him, like,
Yeah.
okay, like then like we know that energy changes, right? For example, energy transforms from one thing to another thing. Then
Yeah.
what is that dependent upon, right? Because the thing is that if you're saying energy, which is not a material thing, or it is a non-living thing, how can that
Yeah.
like change from one state to another state?
Yes.
It's like saying
That's
that
right.
this kind of like this box here can change from being a box to like this cell phone, right? How can that happen?
Yeah.
Like
That's right.
there has to be something that's causing that, right?
Mhm,
Just
mhm.
depend
That's
upon
true. Yeah.
So, so I simply said to him, this is why in Islam we believe that everything is dependent upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That includes energy. And that makes much more sense. So this way you
Mhm.
can simply point him towards the direction of what we believe and in the Quran, in the Sunnah. Okay, so that,
Yeah.
and we believe that this is why we believe that the Quran is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why our belief, we believe, is more rational.
Yes.
So I invited him to read the Quran, and I think this is you can argue like this. You can debunk like this kind of like false atheistic belief using arguments like this. But what you cannot do is use arguments like this to establish akida, which is what he's doing.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You can use it to debunk their position, but you can use it to establish akida. That's a
Yeah.
problematic approach.
Yes. Mm. Okay. I see
Also,
where
another thing is that
I see where you're
you
getting
see
at. Yeah.
oftentimes these type of arguments being used to talk about things of matters of the unseen, and that's not something you can do because we don't know what is out there. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't like told us something in scripture, then we cannot just guess about it. That's also another problematic element. So there's a lot of like innovations that are happening here.
You could argue that it is something that doesn't exist. You could argue that it does exist. People are actually split on that. Even the guy himself who talked to me is split on the definition of infinite and on actual infinites and not actual infinites. Do you know what that means? You probably don't know what that means.
Actual infinite
But
doesn't
yeah,
exist in the real world. There is potential infinite, but actual infinite doesn't exist in the real world. If I had
Funny.
infinite
Do
amount of
you
biryani,
think the 17-year-old debater from a few
Listen.
days ago agrees with you?
listen, I don't know.
Do you think he agrees with you?
That's not an issue. I'm saying to you, if I
Why?
had infinite,
Why?
listen,
He says
If I have-
it can
I'm giving
exist.
I'm giving an
He says it can
Stop
exist.
clicking. I can hear you click. I know you're going to
I'm not
Google.
clicking.
Don't Google.
He says it can exist. Get to your point. Get to the argument. Stop making arguments.
Keep your hands. Yeah,
Oh my god, that's so entertaining.
Get to your argument.
Okay, so I'm saying to you that you can have infinite in the real world. If I amount of atheists that protect us, and I slapped two and they died. Okay, how many atheists are there?
Keep making arguments. Come on.
No, I'm
Stop
asking
asking
a question.
Make your argument.
That's an
You
argument.
don't ask questions. Make an argument. Have you never read a natural argument?
What is
Have you
this?
never read a natural argument? Stop asking questions.
Oh my god. Okay,
You don't ask me a question again.
Mm.
Subhanallah.
Make your argument. Stop asking me questions. Make your argument.
What is this?
I know. Make your argument. Stop asking me questions. Could be. I don't know.
Actually, you know what? I think I made the same mistake when I was trying to like debate like Tom Jump. There was no like moderator, and I think that's
Yeah.
a genuine mistake. Like when you're debating someone, there should be a moderator,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there must always
Yeah.
be a moderator. Yeah.
and this is why like because things can go out of hand completely.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Depends.
So
No,
yeah,
no, depends. No. Depends.
Are
No.
we done
I
yet?
just said no. I misspoke.
Or,
I misspoke. I said no.
oh,
Okay, dependent.
some more.
Therefore, you require a necessary being for all
Sure,
all those dependent things to
Yeah.
work out. Now, what's the condition for a necessary being? You know?
Go ahead.
You don't know. So I don't know.
Just
Say
go ahead.
Ali.
Make your argument.
Ali, say Ali. I don't know.
Go ahead. Make your argument.
Ali,
Please don't.
please tell me.
My
Please tell me.
god, it's so
Please
hilarious.
Make your argument. Come on. Get to the point.
fail. You failed. You're finished. A necessary being is a
What
being
was the exam? Taking examination.
that is independent, self-sufficient, cannot be composed by parts or cannot be any other way.
According to which principle? According to what standard is that? According to what standard is that the definition of a necessary
The
being?
logical principles. Well, we use
No, a logical principle. Under what standard? By what definition is that the definition of a necessary being? Explain to me, please. Explain to me, please. Why is that the definition of a necessary being?
Okay, like
Oh my
Like,
god.
the,
Okay.
the problem
over
is
each
that,
other.
first of all, there's no
Yeah.
dawah happening here. Second of all, even if it was happening, the way he's using the argument is completely wrong. Because the
Okay.
thing is that you can't just jump into a necessary existence.
Yeah.
Like you have
that's
first
right.
have to establish possible existence, then go from
Yeah.
there and show how it's not like necessarily possible for only to
Mm.
have a world full of things that are only possible existence. Like there are some
Yeah.
issues with this. Like
Okay.
basically the philosopher, they go step by step. They don't just jump from
Mm.
one thing to another.
No point.
Like, for
in
example,
either,
let me show you one example of like again, I don't agree with like Ibn Sina. I think he has a lot of problematic views in regards to Islam. But
Yeah.
let me show you how Ibn Sina he kind of argued, and again he also has the same problem. He's arguing with things like that has nothing to do with the Quran and the Sunnah. Let me see. Here we go. Yeah, but so basically, there's this paper by a philosopher. I think his name is Edward Fisher. He's a professor of philosophy. I think he lives in Los Angeles. He made a article on like Ibn Sina's argument for contingency. It's in two
Okay.
parts.
Okay.
Look at how many premises there is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Oh my
7,
God,
8,
so
9,
deep.
10, 11,
Yeah.
12, 13, 14,
Yeah,
15,
step by step.
16,
Yeah. My god.
16,
16
16 premises.
premises in order to come to one conclusion. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And even then, it doesn't establish our Aqidah.
yeah, of course.
Right, so basically the way like Ibn Sina argues is like basically first establishes kind of like this existence, then goes to like possible existence, then he explains like how you can have possibly existence, or how you need to have a necessary existence, and all
Yeah.
this kind of like he talks about causation, causation can lead to different things, and all this kind of like crazy nonsense. But the thing is that this is a very complicated argument, and the thing is that it doesn't even establish our akida. So, so, so like, so when you're using this type of argument, you have to be careful because like atheists especially can use it and turn it against you in so many different ways. But all this kind of like work and it goes nowhere. It's gonna end up well with like him eating like fruit, and that's the thing. Like, where is this any? What does any of this has anything to do with the Quran and the Sunnah?
Things is what? Dependent. Requires something else for its own existence.
But he says that these type of arguments, when you use them, it's completely fine. But what Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says in the Quran, you cannot use that to make an argument. Like,
Yeah.
and this is the thing. Again, like I'm not trying to be like too critical, like with like Brother Ali Dawah and whatnot. Maybe I came across that way, but if I did, I do apologize. But my point here is that a lot of these brothers like Muhammad Hijab and brothers like Hamza Zortzes, they come from a philosophical background, so they studied philosophy, and because of that, like I think they think that this is a very effective way of arguing because they understand philosophy in the sense,
Yeah.
but they haven't studied science. This is another thing you need to understand, which is that science has its problems, but uh, philosophy and science are very connected together. Like philosophical arguments also changes. So, and this type of philosophical argument also has its problems.
Yep.
So when they say that you cannot use like this kind of scientific miracle arguments, some cases they're right, because people sometimes do use it in the wrong way. But if
Yeah.
you're going to dismiss this whole thing, this whole endeavor, then you also need to dismiss ilmul kalam, or use of this kind of like argumentation, because this also doesn't have anything to do with Quran and Sunnah.
Yep.
Okay, because I think I remember one time Asdul Ali, he kind of made this point, which is that, you know, he said things like, "Oh, when did Prophet ﷺ ever argued using like scientific miracle thing, right?" But
Yeah.
the point is that it's mentioned in the Quran, right? And the point is that the scholars have understood this verse exactly as it's written, so you
Yeah.
can use that against an atheist. But
Yeah.
the problem is, then why is it okay to use philosophical arguments? Like, when did the Prophet ever argued with like used contingency argument? When did the companions ever use contingency argument?
It's a philosophical concept that came later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Much later.
It's composed by parts of the being the other way. So which follows that a necessary being has to be the opposite, because
Okay.
the necessary being is opposite of the dependent thing. So now you tell me, can we have a C without a seabed?
Give me the answer.
Well, okay, we need to do ABC here. No, you
Do
can't.
you think I don't know the answer? I'm telling you, I've been telling you for 10 minutes now to make your
Bruv,
argument.
use your brain. Use your brain. How could you have C?
Just
without
make your
seabed?
argument, man. Stop talking. Just
I
make
made
your
an
argument.
argument. You're not even engaging. You know why? Because you know you got slapped up. Bruv, you know you're gonna cry.
Okay,
My
I
God,
don't-
this
Are
guy,
you done with the
this
argument?
guy,
Are you done with the argument?
is an
Are you done with the
idiot.
argument?
You have yes, I'm done with the argument. Can you repeat it? Repeat
Okay,
it.
of course I can confuse you. Based on what exactly is a God the necessary being? Explain to me.
I think that
Bruv,
is
use your brain.
Zishan.
Use
That
your
was
brain. How could you
Zishan,
have
right?
C
Just
without
make your
seabed?
argument and stop talking. Just
I
make
made
your
an
argument.
argument. You're not even engaging. You know why? Because you know you got slapped up. Bruv, you know you're gonna cry.
Okay, I don't.
You're gonna cry.
Are you done with the argument?
Therefore,
Are you done with the argument?
everything
Are you done with
makes
the argument?
sense. You have yes, I'm done with the argument. Can you repeat it?
Okay, okay. Of course I can.
I love the
Based on what exactly is a God the necessary being? Explain to me.
Oh my God.
Then King Cream in here. Don't be jealous.
Based on what
Mashallah.
exactly is God the necessary being?
This is like,
Oh my
I'm gonna be
God,
honest,
that's
like, this
hilarious.
is not acceptable behavior if you're gonna give that.
Oh my God, it's hilarious though. It doesn't matter what. It doesn't
If
matter.
you just want to make like a funny stuff, like that's fine. Like, but
Mashallah. Sorry?
Based on what is God the necessary
I
being?
think that
Click.
that was Brother Zishan, by the way.
Once again, I said to you,
brother Jade inside. Says that contingency argument became popular among Muslims because it's easy and logical to refute atheism. It doesn't refute atheism because there are different type of atheists. Like, for example, you can have an agnostic deist who basically believes in a type of God, and this argument is completely consistent with that belief. And that's the problem. Like, the problem here is that it doesn't establish Islam. It doesn't establish our Aqidah.
Yeah.
But the thing is that they can easily turn around and say, okay, you have established this kind of like strange concept of what appears to be God. Then what does that have to do with your religion, right? And this is why a lot of scholars have warned against using these type of things, because in the past, many deviant sects have used these type of arguments to argue to promote innovation. This is why it's dangerous. This is why many scholars even now don't advise using these type of arguments, and this is not because these are innovations. And so yeah, the thing is that it doesn't necessarily refute atheism. Uh, and oftentimes what happens is that you just arguing back and forth for a very long period of time and nothing's coming out of it. So
We have dependent things. We require something that's
Based on what
independent.
is God, the necessary being. Answer my
No,
question.
no, no. One second. I didn't go to God yet. I'm trying to move you from atheism to deism. I haven't even got to that yet. I haven't said that. Nothing about God. I haven't said about God. Yeah. So you keep clicking. Your teacher is not going to help you. Yeah. You're finished. You're finished. Why also be allowed to be finished? After
Okay, what is the necessary being? The necessary being could be anything.
first of all, like you cannot just say that you're finished without making a proper point. Like he didn't like establish like a necessary existence or like why it's not.
Oh my
Like,
god,
you
that's
need
so
to
funny.
have. You need to have like a necessary existence. He never established that.
Yeah.
What is the
No,
necessary
no,
being?
good,
Argument.
good. So do you accept that there's a necessary being?
Depends on what you define what you mean by necessary being.
Okay,
It could be the existence itself necessary being. It could be the energy
no,
of the
it's
necessary being.
independent. It's self-sufficient. It's not
Okay, I mean,
Yeah, so this is a popular point that a lot of atheists make, which is that you can have like anything as a necessary existence, right? Now, there are problems with these objections, but like the way like Brother Ali Dawah was like tried to debate, like, it's not necessarily a bad objection because like, but like, how do you establish that? Like, you can, even if like, for the sake of argument, you say that it's someone who's dependent,
Yeah.
you can establish some
Yeah.
attributes, but it doesn't establish Islam, and it has nothing to do with the Quran, like.
Yeah.
I'm giving you a response to your stupid question. A necessary being could be.
You got an answer. You child.
A necessary being could be anything. It could be energy. It could be
okay.
prior to the Big Bang, a perfect balance of energy. By the way, we probably don't
Okay,
know
so good,
perfect balance of
guys.
energy.
It
It could be a multiverse which exists. It could be a hierarchy of deities that is combined by
No problem.
a circle that forms a necessary being. What is a necessary being? Like, you need to define that. In order to explain to me that a necessary being proves the existence of.
So
God, you need to first answer to me
Okay.
why you think a necessary being.
Brother,
exists
are we
in all
are
worlds,
we
and why
going
you think
to
that fits the criteria of the-
continue this for a long
can't do that
while?
because you
yeah,
know
we're
I'm-
nearly finished. We're gonna watch a few minutes, then I'm gonna end it.
I'm getting.
Because you can't tell me why a
Honestly,
necessary
I'm
being
getting a
has this
bit
definition. You don't even know
sleepy
the name of the argument which you're proposing.
Are you finished?
Yes.
Oh, you are finished in a minute. Listen, universe, multiverse, superverse, Super Mario verse, energy, energy, whatever you want to call it. They all are infinitely rely on the necessary being.
False.
Yes,
False.
no, one second. Let me listen to you.
False.
Listen to me. Yeah, okay. Just to be charitable, I'm having this to show how ignorant you are. I'm trying to tell you this, man. Come on.
Wow.
So
Wow.
funny.
Listen now. Okay,
Now he's waking up. He doesn't want to do ad hominems.
Okay, does
Okay, so
Yeah. Are
so
we done?
yeah, we're done.
Okay, thank
Enough of
God.
that.
All right.
Anyway,
Yeah, I'm kind of sleepy already as it is.
yeah, I can tell. Anyway, the main point that I'm trying to make is that by showing all that, is that, and this is advice to Brother Ali Dawah, like, and many people who use this type of philosophical arguments, just to show that, like, look, if you're going to say, and it's perfectly valid to say that you cannot use this type of scientific arguments that has nothing to do with our proper understanding of Islam. That's perfectly fine, and we accept that.
Yeah.
But then why is it okay to use this type of kind of philosophical argument that has nothing to do with Islam? Like, why?
Yeah.
Like, why the double standard?
Yeah.
And this is a genuine question that I think a lot of these brothers who use ilmul kalam arguments need to explain, because
Yeah.
it seems hypocritical to me. And like a lot of
Yeah.
like these kind of atheists, they don't know much about Islam. But if they actually studied Aqidah, they would be able to actually argue against this. They will say that, oh, this argument doesn't fit in with what you believe in. It actually contradicts many of the things you believe in.
Yeah.
And on top of it,
Yes.
you're making claims about the unseen, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically argues like it's actually not allowed for us to make claims about the unseen, because the knowledge of the unseen is only with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why when Angel Gabriel asked Prophet Sallallahu this question that, do we know when the last hour is? And he said that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, right?
Yeah.
No one
Yeah.
knows, because it's a matter of the unseen.
Yeah.
So if he
But,
himself, and he's being the prophet, if he doesn't know, then how can you make claims about the unseen?
yes.
Simply based
exactly.
on some vague logical concept.
Yes,
Instead, isn't
that's
it
right.
better to simply argue from the Quran?
Yeah.
Now, again, like, sure, you can use this type of arguments to show falsehood in their belief, to kind of like deconstruct their belief. But you cannot
Yeah.
use that to like establish what is true and what is actually false.
Yeah.
Because there are problems with that.
Yep.
You can show why Islam is true, but not with this kind of method. There are problems with this method. However, there are ways that you can use this type of arguments where it's not necessarily lead to innovation. And I think even Taymiyyah kind of like used this form of arguments, but the way he used it is based on the Quran and Sunnah, or at least he didn't deviate from it. Like, for example, you can establish what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran using logic, but you cannot use logic simply and completely ignore Quran and Sunnah to like establish Aqidah. Like that's not acceptable. So yeah, as Brother Dread Insight says, it's better to stick to Al Quran and Sunnah rather than philosophical arguments. Yeah, exactly. Now again, like I'm not saying that they cannot be useful. Like for example, you can use them to debunk their kind of like moral position or their like uh their I don't know, like their kind of like naturalistic position. But you cannot use it to like establish Aqidah. You have to go to the scriptures for that. Because if the scripture is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then there's nothing else to argue. Because you can show the prophecies of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You can show that why the Quran makes sense morally, why the Quran makes sense scientifically even, right? You can make this up arguments, but here you are at least arguing from the Quran itself. So yeah, I think that's my advice to Brother Alido is to like not use this type of arguments or any of the brothers that use them. But yeah, so yeah, any last words, Saki? I think we should go now.
Yeah, no more last words. Okay, I'm very, very tired right now. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can tell.
I
I'm so
can't
sorry for
think.
keeping you for so long.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you guys for watching. Yeah.
I've worked tomorrow anyway. All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, bro. Thank you for joining me. I think I'll let
All
you
right.
go now, and I'll say my goodbyes, inshallah.
All right.
You
Okay.
wanna say anything to the audience?
Nah,
By the way,
nothing,
go and
nothing
subscribe
much.
to
Yeah.
Brother Emian's channel.
Yes. Yeah.
Subscribe to
Please
my
do
channel.
subscribe to. For those of you who are still watching and have not subscribed to by the Islamic Callings channel, please do subscribe because
Yeah.
the subscription help us keep
Yeah,
us motivated. All right. To do this.
And
Yeah. To
yeah,
this one. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. And again, thank you, bro, for joining, and inshallah, I'll see
Yes.
you later, inshallah, on our next stream.
Inshallah.
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 Okay. Brother Dread Insight says, thank you very much, Brother Islamically. Thank you too, bro. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. And again, I want to make something very clear. Uh, I know that I criticized Brother Ali Dawah in his stream, but I hope you guys understand it's coming from a good place. If I was if Brother Ali Dawah feels like he was attacked in any way, shape, or form, I do apologize. That was not my intention. My intention is to simply, like raise awareness against this type of like ilmul kalam kind of like arguments because they can be bad. They can go really badly for many people. I think we should argue from the Quran and Sunnah. I think we should argue and show that Islam is a positive thing. And so on these points, I do disagree with Brother Ali Dawah and the way he kind of approaches Dawah in a sense. But I still have a lot of respect for Brother Ali Dawah, and I want to make it clear because I do think that he has done a lot of good. And so I hope Brother Ali Dawah, if he's watching, he's not upset by any of the things I said. If you are, then I do apologize. But the point, I hope that my criticism, I have good intention. I hope it came across that way. And I do apologize if I ever crossed any line. I may also not. Forgive me if I've done anything wrong, but I hope the point I've made is clear. What is that? Yes, I don't think that this type of scientific arguments, if you're using it in a way where it's not aligned with how the scholars have explained it, then you shouldn't use it. But if it's aligned with Quran and Sunnah and the way the scholars have understood it, then I don't think there's anything wrong with using this type of argument because you're at least arguing from the Quran. But if you use ilmul kalam, then you're basically using an innovation that has nothing to do with the Quran, and you're making claims about the unseen. Both of these two things are problematic, and this can lead to deviation from our aqidah or our belief. So yeah, that's the message I want to leave with, and that's the advice I have for everybody. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and inshallah I'll see you guys next time, and yeah, on our next stream, inshallah. So take care. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.